stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone hear me? You're back. Okay. The board has been meeting in closed session. Item 4.1, conference with legal counsel. No action. Section 5.1. For information discussion of possible action today is the special. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item should complete a yellow request to address the board of trustees. Address the board of trustees form located at the table at the entrance to the board request forms are to be submitted to the board clerk before each item is discussed. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and the board will limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. However, in exceptional circumstances, when necessary to ensure full opportunity for public input, the board president may, with board consent, adjust the amount of time allowed for public input and/or the time allotted for each speaker. Any such adjustment shall be done equitably so as to allow a diversity of viewpoints. The president may also ask members of the public with the same viewpoint to select a few individuals to address the board on behalf of that viewpoint. So the first topic, the only topic, is consider to removal the hate you give as a required novel from English 9 curriculum. We do have over 60 speakers. So we are, as a board, we are allowed to limit to 20 minutes. What is the will of the board? To go over 20 minutes? I would suggest that we lower the time allotted to each speaker to allow for everybody to speak. Is that okay with the board?
What time?
To a minute and a half. That gives us 90 minutes of presentation. Over 90 minutes. Okay. So, Maria, we will set that at 90 seconds. And we will the yellow go on at 45 seconds? Okay, so each person will have a minute and a half. The orange or yellow button will come on at 45 seconds, and in the best interest of our time tonight, we will stop as soon as that red button goes. So I will ask you please to stop speaking as soon as the red, and if you go over, I get to count the gavel. So. And I want to louder. Yes. Do you want me to repeat that? Please. Yes. Okay. You want to line me up?
I don't have. If you talk on one of those mics, it'll be much louder. I'm not connected to that yet.
How's that? Yes. All right. Okay. So I will repeat that. Because we have over 60 speakers, we do have the board does have the authority to only listen to 20 minutes of speakers, but we'd like to hear from everybody. Therefore, we are going to limit to each speaker to a minute and a half instead of 3 minutes, so we can hear everybody. And the orange or yellow button will light up at 45 seconds. You'll have 45 seconds to finish your thought. When the red button, when the red light goes off, please stop where you're at. We won't be going over any time at all from the red button, and I will gavel anyone who goes over. I don't want to, but I will. Just before we Before we listen to our speakers, I just made a couple notes I'd like to share. First of all, I really want to thank everyone for being flexible and moving, because we really wanted everyone to be able to participate in this very important meeting. Oh, sorry, Chrissy, I thought you were waving at me. I also want to thank you guys for all coming tonight. I want to commend you for each of you, regardless of your position on this topic, for taking an active interest in our students and this community. We all have at least one thing in common in this room, is that we care for our students in Western Placer Unified School District. And I want you to remember that. I want you to remember that as we listen to comments and opinions that are different from ours, that I believe they come from our hearts, but they will be different, and that's what makes us special, is the fact that we can have differing opinions, but we are still respectful. I will also remind everybody, again, we are neighbors and community members, and we are expected to respect each other when we're up here talking. Any disruptions will not be tolerated, so if there's a disruption, we will stop the time, and that person will still get the full time to voice their thoughts. Any continued disruptions, anyone who continually disrupts will be asked to leave the meeting. So, everyone good? Okay, great. With that, we should start. All right, number 1, Teresa Paris. You get to test whether I actually am going to pound that gavel or if I'm just a big talker.
I hope you're patient with me. So I am an advocate against the book, of course. I feel like this book is hate speech. It's hate speech against family. It's hate speech against children. It's a hate speech against police. And therefore, I feel like, why are we having this book on your guys' to read book when there's so many other wonderful books out there? I mean, Krista Hanna has a wonderful book called Nightingale. Amy Tan has Joy Luck Club. And again, I mean, that's only 2 references, but my question is, why this book?
You still have more time.
Oh.
Those lights will tell you when.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, I mean, that is my point. So I'm absolutely against this book. One more thing. If anybody wants to read this outside of it being a book mandated for children, read it. We have no problem. It's a free country. Read the book. I'm just against it for our children to read. Thank you.
Just hold 1 second. We're going to make our lights work here, hopefully. Yes. Okay, yeah, on deck, Stephanie Hall. And then after Stephanie, Erica Huggins. You're on deck after Stephanie. Okay, hopefully this works. Okay. Is it working?
Well, it was showing red up there when it was yellow here.
You'll hear the beep either way.
I'm not going to take that on.
Okay, go for it.
I just wanted to share one quick comment. A very, very wise man just told me earlier this afternoon that you should never ban books from kids because they will find a way to read it without the adult supervision.
Hold on, I'm going to put my timer on my phone. I'm going to do it for 45 seconds. And then it'll go off and then I'll start it again. Okay? Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. Go.
Dear members of the Board of Trustees, I am here to defend the inclusion of the Hate U Give in our district's 9th grade curriculum, which has recently raised concern among some members of our parent community. While it is true that the book contains profanity, violence, and deals with difficult issues such as racism and police violence, it is important to remember that it is also a powerful and thought-provoking work of literature that has won multiple awards and is nationally acclaimed for its power to engage students and encourage critical thinking. It is worth noting that reading a novel does not imply agreement with its content. Rather, it provides an opportunity to explore a different perspective and broaden our understanding of the world around us. Literature is a gateway to the diverse experiences of others, and it is through this exploration that we can grow as individuals and as a society. While it is true that the book contains profanity, violence, and sexuality, it is important to remember that these are all elements of the real world that our students are living in. Shielding our students from these realities will not make them go away, but rather leave them ill-prepared to deal with them when they arise. Reading literature that deals with difficult issues can be a powerful way for our students to process and understand the world around them, and to develop empathy and critical thinking skills. The use of this book directly supports the mission of the Western Placer School Board, which states to empower students with the skills, knowledge, and attitudes for success in an ever-changing world. In conclusion, I urge the board to recognize the value of literature in promoting critical thinking and empathy, and to continue to support the inclusion of the hate you give in our curriculum. By doing so, we are creating a safe and inclusive environment for our students to learn about and engage with the world around them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mariela Rodriguez, and then Julie Rizzardo is on deck.
Okay, this book, The Hate You Give, is very powerful, and yes, it does have violent and empowering scenes to 14, 15-year-olds, but at the same time, as a personal high schooler and a 17-year-old, I would rather learn about this type of book in a school where it's controlled, in a very contained environment, than rather out in the real world on your own. And even having the experience by yourself, it could be very traumatizing. So that's all I know my time with. I'm not
Okay, Julie Rizzardo, and then Josh and Michelle are on deck. Great, thank you, board members. My name is Julie Rizzardo, and I have 2 young adults attending Lincoln High School and 12 Bridges High School. One is in the 9th grade English class that is reading the book, The Hate You Give. I am in support to keep the book as part of the 9th grade English courses. These are extremely challenging times for young people. They are actually facing adult issues, and they need adult tools. Books like The Hate You Give are those tools to help young people examine stereotypes, learn about systemic racism, and more importantly, explore solutions. Let's teach our young people by example. We know these young people sitting before us here today are going to make incredible contributions to our society. They will make groundbreaking scientific discoveries because their education gave them the proper tools. They will make award-winning movies and works of art because their education gave them the proper tools. They will solve global environmental problems because their education gave them the proper tools. They will find solutions to systemic racism and violence because their education gave them the proper tools. Keep the Hate You Give in the 9th grade English curriculum. It is critical. It will encourage our young people to work together to navigate this new world. Thank you. I can't read this. Greg Warner on deck. And that's not working, so Maria, when you're at 45 seconds, can you raise your hand? Okay, perfect. You mark this up, go.
Okay, so we have a statement from Lipta, and she's going to try to read as fast as she can.
Okay. Dear Western Placer Board of Trustees, WIPTA has been an active collaborator with the district on numerous items from curriculum and academic instruction to having a voice in policy and procedures. Our local education professionals spend a great deal of time reviewing, studying, and recommending curriculum to adopt to enhance our students' education. We're skipping parts in there. It's okay, on time. WPUSD has a well-developed curriculum adoption process with multiple stakeholders involved, including parents. An immediate change to approved curriculum demonstrates a lack of trust for our members' decades of professional educational experience and doesn't provide the opportunity for input from all stakeholders. Asking teachers to potentially drop curriculum mid-year, let alone mid-unit, puts educators in a stressful situation and now effectively tasks teachers to develop new material. Our educators put in countless hours developing engaging lessons from the curriculum. We diligently work to ensure that students have a welcoming, safe place to discuss all the curriculum. Teachers plan lessons in advance to guarantee there are supports in place for all of our students. Any decisions made about curriculum impact both students and teachers. A decision made quickly often produces unintended consequences that will take away from the time and resources from students, since teachers will now work again to produce engaging lessons for all students. And respectfully, when the workload of our teachers is impacted, we have to demand to bargain that workload. We ask that you respect the educators.
Thank you. Okay, Greg Warner and Melissa A. is on deck. Yeah, just raise your hand when it's on. Oh, okay, so if you're not looking at Maria, she's going to say 45 seconds, right when you're talking. Like, right over you. All right.
All right, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Greg Warner. I did my best after we got notice that this meeting was going to be held in less than 48 hours to go check out the book and read it so that we can have an informed discussion. And I read the email and I was looking for what could be the controversy. And I've gotten all through but 70 or so pages. I don't see it. I don't see the hate speech. I do see a book that has themes of duality, revolution, a sense of belonging, acceptance, told from a protagonist with a perspective that would challenge our students. If we are looking for a piece of art, as all literature is, to include specifically in curriculum, it should be something that provokes their critical thinking skills, challenges their ideals, and the point of having this in school is so that those opinions can be brought forth in a moderated classroom with a professional educator. So these topics aren't easy, but the question is whether or not some of the scenes, the language is gratuitous. It is not. It is elemental to the story and what's taking place. For example, we can go on about the use of the F word. The few times that it is spoken by a character, that character is immediately rebuked to shut your mouth and use better language. So the rest of the time that it is in there, it's discussing the acronym.
Thank you. Sandy Marquez is on deck.
I'm not here to talk about my personal thoughts on this book. We know it's controversial. I'm not going to read the entire policy 6144 regarding controversial topics. The board has it, the teachers should know it. There are 8 guidelines to follow when teaching topics deemed controversial. I'm asking the board to look at these policies, especially pertaining to this book. Have they all been followed? Number 1 states the topic shall be suitable to the age and maturity of the students. I'm wondering how the board and teachers came to the conclusion that this book was a great choice for freshmen. I'm also wondering what action has been taken to ensure that teachers are keeping their opinions to themselves and presenting content in a balanced manner. I'm also wondering what action is being taken when a teacher violates this policy. Many feel they have already been in several violations. I'm asking that the board review the current policy and the actions that have taken place in the past few days, parental notification and acknowledgement or lack thereof, conducting surveys regarding specific controversial topics without parental consent, segregating students who opt out. I'm also asking the board to review Regulation 6161.1 pertaining to the selection and evolution of instructional materials and implement that review process in policy 6144. Thank you.
Marquez. And Andrew Stewart, am I saying it? Is it Sandy? Marquez. Going once, going twice, 3 times, all right. Andrew Stewart, and then Lori Stanley on deck.
All right. So I'm simply here just to share my experiences here at Lincoln High School. I am a senior here at Lincoln High School, and I'm extremely proud to be a fighting zebra. During my 4 years, I've had the opportunity to learn about different perspectives and cultures and how to discuss these issues. Modern issues must be talked about, and how you teach them is just as important. In my AP government class, I learned how to conduct effective, credible research, then civically argue your position. We got to have an insightful conversation one day about the Black Lives Matter movement, and both sides listened to each other. In English 11, I got to study the life of Condoleezza Rice, where she went from being a poor black girl in the South to becoming Secretary of State, all through hard work and hustle. School has the power to teach us about different cultures and perspectives in a proper academic way. Many modern issues are already known to pretty much every single student here at LHS, especially with technology. So is this book the best way for students to learn about this? Based on my current research and reading of the book, no. There are better, credible resources out there that we already have access to, but there's also much more dangerous sources out there than this book. With our access to the internet, the information and perspectives is already out there, especially for current 9th graders. So I propose to put in the English 9 curriculum to teach students on how to properly research, study, and debate these modern issues. Is that time?
Andrew, that was very eloquent. Lori Stanley and Joe, you guys need to write better. There's a lot of doctors in here. Uptain Villa? Did I do that? Uptain Villa? Okay.
Good evening. One of my biggest goals for my students is that they learn to think critically with both their rational brains in conjunction with their emotional ones. Jessica Spence, a licensed therapist and social worker, teaches us that the rational mind approaches knowledge intellectually, uses past experience to inform thinking, is focused, detached, and uses research, planning, and fact-finding to inform opinions. The emotional mind uses emotions to make decisions, is passionate, reactive, often creative, teaches us how we're doing emotionally, is often opposed to the rational mind, and makes decisions based on what feels good. While the national versus emotional brain has been a topic of discussion for many years, many scholars are now calling the combination of both types the wise mind. The wise mind uses both rational and emotional thinking to see the bigger picture and understand the value of both emotion and reason. Essentially, the wise mind takes both emotion and logic into account when forming opinions, and especially when learning how to find the voice to express those opinions. A student came to me this week who was at the board meeting on Tuesday and said, a lot of adults think that if we disagree with them, we're being disrespectful. It's not about disrespect. It's just about differing opinions, and we're working on using our voices. Isn't that what school is supposed to be teaching us? Ways to speak up and be active members of society? This matters to us.
Thank you, Lori. And Kara Schroeder, you're on deck.
Before you look at banning the book, I ask if all the board members have read it cover to cover, just not the sound bites provided by Google. I've only started to read the book with short notice of the meeting. In my hands are the 16 pages of 9th grade language arts standards that all the teachers are working on. And this is for the state of California. 16 pages long is a lot for them to get through. Our teachers completely understand them cover to cover and work to provide the students with the best possible education. Their lesson plans cover this. They work on them constantly. They also use the Socratic method in the classroom to discuss it. And the Socratic method is teaching these kids to listen to and respect both sides. There's not a right, there's not a wrong, but it's setting them up for the world where they're going to have to go out and work in an environment where not everyone agrees with them. They need to be able to have these skills to get into the workforce and be successful. If there's any questions or concerns about what teachers are teaching, every school has an educational leader, and that's their principal. And they can turn to these people for help if they need it. It is just not something they walk into the classroom, check the box, and we're teaching this lesson. This is something that's given lots of thought, worked on constantly, not only here, but outside at school hours.
Thank you, Jim. On deck is Daniela Zimmerman.
Sorry, I'm short. All right, so I wanted to just do a quick thing. By banning this book, you are taking away the chance for our young adults to see the world from someone's point of view who doesn't look like them, think like them, or act like them. You take away their ability to practice critical thinking skills and engage in moderated classroom discussion around extraordinarily relevant but difficult issues facing the country. I don't have an issue with a parent being able to opt out their child from this reading, but denying all students the chance to grow and learn about the world, themselves, others, and important issues is wrong. If we allow a few parents to control the narrative, we destroy the ability of our children to continue to grow to smart, informed, critical thinkers. Thank you.
On deck is Quest Rhodes. Quest. Good evening. Thank you for listening to everyone tonight. My name is Daniela Zimmerman. I'm a board member of PFLAG, Greater Placer County, and I work with youth throughout the county. I'm a retired teacher, and as I've listened to some of the teachers, and I've been here to your senior awards ceremony to give out scholarships, I know that you've gone to a lot of trouble to recruit and hire highly qualified educators. Trust them. You've hired them, they've been vetted, they've been through training, and I also want to say that banning books is a slippery slope. History teaches us that. What will be banned next? Thank you. And Laura, I'm going to massacre this, I am so sorry. I'm sorry? Thank you, Processes.
I'm Quest, I'm a senior at Lincoln High School, and I'd like to just start off immediately. Banning books is fundamentally wrong on multiple levels, as it both indirectly and directly violates the concepts outlined in our respected Constitution. The very foundation of Our Beautiful Nation is built on the freedom of speech and the right to self-determination. Banning any book, including Thomas's novel I Hate You Give, destroys the core principles in which our founding fathers built this very country. Jefferson once wrote, "Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost." On the topic of liberty, banning books directly violates the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, which guarantees the rights of individuals to seek and receive information and ideas, and to express their views without censorship or interference. Placing a ban on the Hate You Give not only restricts the freedom of the author to speak freely, but more importantly restricts the freedom of the students to read the content they choose and make informed decisions for themselves. Students should be free to study and learn without fear of persecution and form their own opinions based on the information they consume. Students, as people and citizens of the United States, reserve the right to free expression, and government organizations do not possess the privilege to restrict this right when they feel it best benefits their agenda. In short, how can this board claim to be student-centered, but also be willing and able to stifle our viewpoints? By banning the Hate You Give, you'll be effectively censoring the opinions of those who made your job possible in the first place, the students. Thank you.
Quest just showed you all how to cram a 3-minute speech into Don't take any breaths at all. Okay, Laura. And then on deck is, I'm sorry. Gianna Bros is on deck.
members. I'm a senior at Lincoln High School, and I've taken a total of 6 math classes over my 4 years here. And a couple things stood out to me about the survey that the board has put out over the past week. I believe it was on Wednesday night. And I don't believe that it should be considered in the voting process of whether or not the hate you give should be allowed in schools or not. The timeline and accessibility of the survey and the fact that this meeting was and kind of stands to be not inclusive, there was an extremely likely possibility of volunteer bias in the survey, and the saddening fact that many people resorted to voting multiple times on the survey should highlight the fact that the survey should essentially either be retaken or sent out again to parents to get an effective opinion of parents. There are a lot of problems with the survey. One of them was the timing and accessibility of it. It was sent out, I believe, Wednesday night, and it closed Thursday night. That's such a small window for people to effectively voice their opinions on such a nuanced and incredibly difficult question. And the fact that this meeting was being held on 4/40 on a Friday is also a testament to the lack of inclusiveness that is allowing certain individuals to be overrepresented. Okay, let me start. Overrepresented, thank you. And to exclude any would be a matter of silencing them.
Thank you very much. All right. Gianna, you're up, and could you please not scream so we can, thank you. I know you're excited. And you're doing a great job. Okay, Kendall DeRungs, you are on deck.
Hello, board. I was here Tuesday night to discuss the banning of the hate you give, and I'm here to talk about it again. For context, I'm a high school student, and I read this book for my English class last year, and I'd hate to see its removal. To ensure that I'm knowing what I'm talking about, I read the entire 444 pages last night to the best of my ability. I would also first like to address the multiple misleading criticisms that have been had about this book. First of all, this book is not anti-cop. It is against cops abusing their power and using excessive force against people when it is not needed. A second point that has been overused is that the book has too much sexual content in it. And I did the math on this, I annotated the book, and I saw all the pages on it. 14 out of 444 pages contain anything that can be deemed sexual, with a majority of these instances taking up less than a paragraph, let alone the entire page. I'd also like to make the point that regardless of the context of the book, the students reading the book are not having opinions imposed on them. Your child is not going to become vehemently anti-cop or racist by reading this book in school. They're instead being given a safe means to express their opinions and hear the opinions of their fellow classmates, not their teachers, on the very controversial yet real subject at hand. A subject so real, in fact, that 1,194 people were killed by police in 2022, the most out of any year in the past decade, with officers only being held accountable for 9 of those instances. Your kids are not being indoctrinated and divided, and as I've seen from the statistics, they're just being shown a perspective of a very real event in America. We've even had discussions in class where students...
Thank you, Gianna. Okay. Crossfield, you're on deck.
I have a daughter who's a student at Lincoln High School, and she asked me this morning if I could speak tonight, so no stress. Many of our kids play video games and listen to Spotify. Did you know Call of Duty has the F word in it 92 times? Grand Theft Auto 5 uses the same profanity 1,018 times. As you know, our kids are listening to music constantly. Most of today's rap and pop has profanity and sexual innuendos. Just for perspective, for those of you who are my age or older, the F word is used in songs by Pearl Jam, The Who, The Doors, Pink Floyd, Steely Dan, and the Rolling Stones. All of this brings me to, I don't think this is about profanity. I think it's about the topics of the book. Restricting information and discouraging freedom of thought undermines one of the primary functions of education, teaching students to think for themselves. Teenagers need to find their way in this world and should know as many other viewpoints as possible so they know their thoughts are their own and not just the product of a limited amount of information. Forcing a community to get rid of a book is a way of forcing one's beliefs on an entire community. Restricting things that make us uncomfortable doesn't make them go away. Complex issues like racism and sexual assault will still exist even if we don't talk to them. I'm sure we all told our children when they were little not to talk to strangers or go with tricky people. This is no different. Knowledge is power.
You guys are Ludovina Dela Cruz, you're on deck. I'm sorry, I'm not a good name announcer.
Thank you for letting me speak. I am very much in favor of keeping this book in our curriculum. Our children need to be exposed to other ideas and cultures to become well-rounded, informed individuals. If you only stay in your comfort lane, you will never actually grow as an individual and you will never learn. The Hate U Give is a critically acclaimed, award-winning piece of art that makes critical thought, empathy, and exposes many to a world they are not familiar with. To strip our children from even the chance to read it is awful. If certain parents want to keep their kids from being exposed to this book, then let them have the option to opt out and read another book. But to keep all our children from having the option to read it, I think is quite frankly un-American. Thank you.
And then Jeffrey Hancock, you're on deck.
Before I begin, let me preface this by saying I'm speaking for the behalf of someone who couldn't be here today because of personal reasons. They wanted me to say the following. I'm sorry to say this, but we didn't have a problem about this book until 12 Bridges felt uncomfortable with it. To be honest, the majority of Black population is white. Lincoln High didn't have a problem about it, and a good size of the population is people of color. For this book to be banned is racist. Might as well call yourself racist for feeling uncomfortable about learning a real-life story of a person of color. It's based on a true story that should be shared about police brutality and racism. I might not be here, but I still have a voice to stand up for this book. This is a book that people of color relate to, what I relate to. Do you know how it feels being racially profiled? If you know why we should have this book. Us kids have a right to read what we want, and you're going to take away our knowledge? If it's about the curse words, just know it's high school. Your kid is going to hear way worse. You can't shelter kids forever, because after all, how are they going to fend for themselves? If you have this much time to complain about a book, how about worrying about a bigger issue like global warming, or sending money for starving kids, or even the foster care system? Ban this book and you silence the voices of people of color. Thank you.
Jeffrey, you're up, and on deck is Katie Williams.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey. I'm a father and I live in the district. My 2 daughters go to school here in the district, and one day they will go to the high school here, depending on how things go. It's clear that we're not here talking about the sexual content that's inside the book, because we're not here to talk about The Great Gatsby, which is about an extramarital affair. We're not here to talk about the works of William Shakespeare, which are littered with sexual situations. We're not here to talk about vulgarity. We're not here talking about Of Mice and Men, or To Kill a Mockingbird, or Slaughterhouse-Five. Because all of those books have merit. All those books have literary merit to students. We are here because this book has a perspective that some people do not agree with. And to limit the student's perspective and viewpoints because you don't agree with that viewpoint is wrong. I unequivocally do not think this book, or any book that has been vetted by the academic community and is shown to have merit, should be banned. You are limiting these students' viewpoints and deciding that your viewpoint is the only one that matters. And the school has provided a mechanism if you are uncomfortable with the book. So now you're saying that my student, my daughter, she can't read this book either because you don't agree with the viewpoint. I don't co-parent with you, and you don't co-parent with me.
Keep going. Keep going. You're addressing the board.
The book has been vetted. It has literary merit. It has artistic merit. It has educational merit. There is no good reason to ban it.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Katie Williams and Eileen Snedley on deck. Thank you.
The Hate You Give provides a valuable first-person narrative which contextualizes and personalizes what could otherwise be some very nebulous concepts, namely racism, structural inequality, implicit bias, violence both within and among the residents of the community of the protagonist, as well as perpetrated against them by outside forces. In short, this book makes these difficult topics tangible and allows the reader to establish empathy and identify common ground. I attended our last City Council meeting on Tuesday, and many of the opponents of the book, I heard their concerns, and I recognize that they come from a place of caring. However, many admitted that they had not yet read the book. I think that if they had, many, though of course not all, would have been able to draw parallels between their own lives and their own values and those of the main character. I love Lincoln, and I am proud to raise my 2 children here. However, our town is somewhat lacking in diversity. In order to recognize our own blind spots and uncover the unearned privileges which people like myself have, we desperately need to immerse ourselves in a multitude of perspectives. Literature is one of the most effective ways to do that. I strongly encourage our district to continue to offer this book. Our young adults will be off in that wide world sooner than we care to admit. And we need to make sure they are able to navigate that world with compassion, grace, and humility. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing this freedom of speech today. We live in a great country. I personally am grateful that we had the survey. Unfortunately, I didn't get to fill it out. My husband got to it and then it was shut down. So wish I would have had that opportunity, but I'm glad I'm here today. I have a personal story. There was a football game at Toll Bridges High School, and a couple of rows back from our football coach, there were boys saying, "Fuck this, fuck that," okay? Over and over. And you know what that football coach did? He looked back and said, "One more and you are gonna be kicked off the team." Our football coach said that. Okay, fast forward a few months. Our kids go to an English class. They're handed a book that has this same word in it 89 plus times. We're gonna be okay with that? We're okay that our kids are gonna be listening to this, reading it? And not only that, today in the honors class, they were reading the book silently because it's not okay to read it out loud. I don't know why any book would not be okay to read out loud unless it was not appropriate. Not allowed. And then the students were asked to be in a group together where they were able to talk about, they weren't allowed to talk, they were in a group and they were filling out a worksheet together. I'm sorry, if a teacher cannot talk about a book with the students openly in the Socratic form of speech, it should not happen in the classroom. Thank you.
The Hate You Give includes inappropriate language, sexual content, and refers to the police as pigs and more. My personal opinion, Lincoln PD rocks, and I'm offended for them. Students may be opted out by their parents. This is true. However, most high school students do not want to be singled out, my child included. I'm not asking for this book to be banned, just not standalone core curriculum. Something that's not been brought up as of yet is having I'm not opposed to the discussions and the challenging thoughts, but I'm opposed to the one-sided conversations that were had at Lincoln High School last year. More conservative values were quickly shut down in the classroom. Our students were made to feel that the thoughts didn't matter. One political agenda was presented with the book and the accompanying videos. Perhaps a balanced unit of this book and a more conservative book from a police officer's perspective would be better. Utilize the books to teach students how to have civil conversations and leave knowing it's okay to disagree, and frankly, to end the name calling. Thank you.
And on deck is V.O. Pletzer.
Hi, my name is Ivy Carroll. I'm a student at Lincoln High School. I'm in 10th grade and I'm
I read this book last year, and I do not think we should ban this. This is such a powerful book that I think everyone should have the chance to read. If we look past the police violence and the profanity and the sexual themes for just one moment, this book is about empowerment and finding your voice, being confident. Isn't that what we want to teach to the next generation of students and the people that are going to be running our country soon enough? Isn't that what we want to hear? And these issues are very real in our society. Police violence happens every day. Shouldn't our students know what is happening to people around them? We shouldn't leave them ignorant. We should let them know what is happening in our world. Thank you.
Okay, and on deck, Amber Castillo.
Thank you, Board, for having this special meeting. Last I checked, this is the United States of America, land of the free. So why are ironically named groups like Moms for Liberty leading the charge to censor reading materials that have been approved by experienced educational professionals? This is 2023, not 1943. Harassing teachers and banning books was a weapon of fascists from the past. Our children are smart enough to see how ludicrous these actions are. Our children want to read these books. Our children want to be seen in these books. Our children do not want their educations and futures tainted by two-faced hate mongers like Tanner DeBella, Greg Farrington, and Matthew Oliver. If people want to protest something, why don't they ask the mayor of Lincoln why she is facilitating a dance for 5 to 10-year-olds at a bar? Morals matter. If people are more upset about a book that mentions police brutality than they are about actual police brutality, they need to reevaluate their priorities. The Hate U Give is a multiple award winner that has been a bestseller for almost 2 years. Banning it because they're offended by the word fuck is idiotic. Please protect our schools' rights to provide a compassionate, well-rounded education to our children. Thank you.
You're on deck.
Thank you. So as has been said by others, I would recommend anyone that hasn't read the book to read the book. I saw the stuff online, was curious why the drama. Have the book already. I bought it a couple years ago for my kids to read, read through the book in a day. The comments and things that I saw online, they reduce it just to sexual content, swearing, cop hate. It isn't that. And so please read the book. The parents, the board, form an opinion about it for yourself. Be intimately connected with the details versus just something online that has the number of times it says a swear word in it. It has so much to offer. So as the old saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. The topics in the book include experiencing death and loss, navigating conflicting feelings, race, socioeconomic differences, redemption, forgiveness, change, community, trauma, family support, finding yourself in difficult situations that you don't want to be in, living in fear, overcoming fear, love, commitment, bravery, leadership, and so much more. And yes, it hits heavily on race and economic inequalities. I challenge again, read the book before anybody has something negative to say about it. I understand and commend the parents that want to be active in their kids' education and think that we should be that gatekeeper if we feel so inclined, and so find out for ourselves. It's an opportunity for discussion and enlightenment for our kids. They're facing hard things, and
Thank you, Amber.
Think for themselves.
Ava Upton, you're on deck. And I want to thank everybody for just stopping right when I say thank you. I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, my name is Madison. I'm a student here at Lincoln, and the fact that the students today are coming to fight for this book should be reason enough to keep it. And just as it is stated in the book, what's the point of having a voice if you're going to be silent in those moments you shouldn't be? The story addresses issues of police brutality, gun violence, and weaponizing stereotypes. The Hate U Give shows how racism can cripple communities, making it timeless in its relevance. It is challenged for its language, violence, and promoting anti-police agenda.
However, if you're only looking for the bad, that's all you will find. There are bad cops, but there are also good cops shown in the story, like Star's uncle, who acted as a father figure for her while her own was in jail. This story was written with genuine respect for the humanity without shying away from the hard truths. This is why it should be saved. Thank you.
Ava Upton? Are you here? Ava Upton? Gone. Okay. Curtis Vandermolen, you're up, and Emma Blackthorn. Thank you, Blackthorn. You're on deck.
I support including the book and its contents in the curriculum. I've had to wrestle with a lot of similar issues in my life. I grew up and still am a conservative white cis man, but I'm married to an Indigenous woman and I have Indigenous children. I have seen racism and sexism affect my children. I've seen racism and sexism affect my children within Western Placer Unified School District, from teachers, from peers, and from staff. It's really unfortunate that I have to tell my daughters that they have to behave differently in a traffic stop than I do because they're not white. But I do because I don't want my daughters to die. These are the kinds of themes that are covered in this book, and there are different perspectives. I have had to learn those different perspectives in my life. There are other people who don't ever have exposure to that, so making it part of your curriculum ensures that there is at least some opportunity to learn, to grow, to reach out, to research, and to understand. It is important that those conversations happen here, and that those conversations are taken home with students so that our whole community gets the benefit.
And Megan Cohill, you're on deck.
Thank you. I just wanted to shout out to the student that's the math student and the research methods. I'm Senior Dean of Research. Good job. Thank you for noticing the research issues. Books are invitations from an author to step outside of our own lived experiences and experience and see the world from a different lens. This builds character. It helps us ask important questions of ourselves and reflect on our own thoughts and communities. It helps us ask questions like, is this what I want for my community? How can I change it? Does this exist here? How do I feel about it? These are character building questions. And I think that that's an important part of our educational system and probably a key part of your educational mission. So I encourage you to keep this book, to keep all books, especially ones that offer diverse perspectives.
Megan Cohill, and then Crystal Turco. Is that right? You're up. You're on deck. Okay, I saw people getting up. Sorry. Megan Cohill, are you up here? Okay. Crystal, are you here? All right. Awesome. Laura Cox, you're on deck.
My name is Crystal Turco, and I'm a parent of a current 9th grade student at 12 Bridges High School. I strongly oppose removing the Hate You Give from the approved curriculum. Giving parents the option to opt out for their child seems to be an equitable and reasonable approach. According to data from the California Department of Education, literacy rates among teens plummeted during the pandemic. And I find it interesting that this particular book is the focus of such controversy under the guise of vulgarity and language. I don't believe the same controversy was expressed earlier this year when the 9th grade students read The House on Mango Street. Nor do I think the same outrage has been expressed if it was reading Catcher in the Rye or To Kill a Mockingbird. Let's at least articulate the true issues: racism, being Black in America, and being traumatically impacted by police brutality. These are uncomfortable subjects, but necessary to support broad literacy, and I support students becoming broadly literate.
learning about new ideas, perspectives, cultures, and topics, and engaging with a variety of books only strengthen one's ability to be empathetic and understand experiences and opinions other than your own. Thank you for your time, and I encourage you to move on your staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Crystal. Laura? And on deck is Max Williamson.
Thank you. So my name is Laura Cox. I have 2 students in the district here, one who will be 9th grader next year here at Lincoln High. I do believe that this book should remain in the curriculum and should not be removed. The book in question is part of the state-approved curriculum that is being used in high schools across the country, across the state. And I don't believe that our students are any less than those students. They are not less mature, they are not less able to handle this material, they are not less capable. These students sitting behind me are just as capable to handle this material as all those other students. I believe and I have faith in our students to be able to handle these difficult topics. Second, if you think that limiting access to this book is going to limit their access to swear words and sexual situations, that is just a fallacy. And if parents want to do that, the school and the district has already made the very wise and proactive decision to allow an opt-out. This shouldn't even be having a conversation. The problem is already solved. You don't want your student to read the book? Opt them out. Done. And lastly, and again, props to the Laura, by the way, great name, about the problems with the survey. It was rushed, ill-conceived, and should be considered invalid. A more valid survey recently came out from CNN and from CBS that talks about the fact that most parents, more than 80% in a nationwide poll, generally do not want their students' access limited. Thank you.
Max, you're up. And Elizabeth Williamson, you're on deck.
What's up? My name is Max. I'm a senior, or no, I'm not a senior. I was a senior last year, graduated from last year. Quite frankly, I wish I had read this book because if children are not taught certain topics in a classroom setting, they will simply encounter these topics in the real world. They will encounter them on social media, in real life, tons of times. And in these circumstances, they will not have guidance available most of the time. If you want your children to be mature enough to be able to handle these topics, they need to be taught how. They need to be taught about them in the right way. And quite frankly, children of color are forced to learn about these topics way sooner because they are subject to them a lot. Their family members are subject to them. It is frankly traumatizing. So why are other children not mature enough to learn about them? I think we should focus on the actual issues that the book presents. Thank you.
Elizabeth Williamson? Oh, anyone? Okay. Chris Wardlaw, you're up. And Marlene Martinez, you're on deck.
Good evening. I'm actually speaking here as a parent of 2 kids in the district. My 8th grader goes to 12 Bridges Middle, so he would be potentially experiencing this curriculum next year. And my worldview, I don't think is matching everyone's worldview in the room, and I'm totally fine with that. I don't feel like my worldview should be put on other people, but I do believe that my sons need to experience a wide variety of perspectives. Even people who don't share my worldview or my son's version of worldview. And I think, I know the word being banned is being thrown out here, and I know some people are saying it's not being banned. I get what you're saying, but if you opt my son out of having these discussions with other people in an environment that I do trust the education of this district, if you opt my son out, then that infuriates me. He should have the opportunity to have this discussion with people who don't like the book. I certainly didn't like every book I read in high school. And I do believe the opt-out option should take care of that business.
And Lori Brown, you're on deck.
on my own time and fell in love with it. Once I learned that it was being read in classrooms, I was thrilled. Not only because of how much I enjoyed this book personally, but because I got to see a minority represented in the classroom. A minority's voice was represented. As a daughter of an immigrant, I haven't felt represented until my 11th grade English class. The Hate You Give is important specifically because it is eye-opening to other perspectives and isn't afraid to show real issues happening in our country, although it may be scary. In this school, I have been called racial and sexual slurs to my face, such as faggot and wetback. This is why books like The Hate You Give are so important in schools. Don't ban this book. Instead, I ask the board to add more books like The Hate You Give. Thank you.
Jennifer Alessio, you're on deck. Lori Brown. Lori Brown. All right. Jennifer, are you here? Jennifer. Yep, thank you. Colleen Poe, you're on deck.
First, I'd like to thank the board for giving me an opportunity to speak. I'd also like to thank the 12 Bridges administration for giving us parents an opportunity to opt out. However, in the information given, the administration was not clear on the exact nature of the sexual content in the book. So I'm going to read it for us. I'm reading you from page 81. Fooling around isn't new for us, and when Chris slipped his hand in my shorts, I didn't think anything of it. Then he got me going, and I really wasn't thinking. After all, for real, my thought process went out the door. And right as I was at that moment, he stopped, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a condom. He's raised his eyebrows at me, silently asking for an invitation to go all the way. There's another quote I'm going to read. Chris is behind me, the only thing between me and the hoop. Let me clarify, my butt is against his crotch, my back against his chest. I'm bumping up against him, trying to figure out how to get the ball in the hole. It sounds way dirtier than it actually is, especially in this position. I understand why Bridget missed shots though. And I have another quote. It's not enough. My hands travel below his chest, and he's bulging in more than his arms. I start unzipping, is that the end?
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I missed that. Colleen Poe? Oh, Colleen Poe's in the restroom?
No, it's Colleen Keene.
Oh, Colleen. Colleen, don't look at that. That is Colleen Poe, is it not?
It's a dot.
Oh, it's a fancy period. Okay. Shannon Burns, you are on it.
So I just wanted to say that nobody in this room wants this book banned. You want your kid to read what you just heard, plus there's way more than that that's just very disturbing and should be rated X. So you want your child to read it, then go to, I don't know, maybe the public library has it, Amazon, all kinds of places, Barnes and Nobles. Nobody wants the book banned, but it's not appropriate for our children. Also, a couple speakers mentioned the F word. Yeah, the F word's in it. No, fuck is in it 89 times. My freshman is not allowed to say it. Of course he says it, but he's not around us and he's not allowed to.
Thank you, Colleen. Shannon, you're up. And Tammy Jones, you are on deck. Tammy Jones on deck.
So I'm actually Burns. I stole my mom's spot.
What?
Please remove her. She's disruptive. Okay, I will gladly leave because I see that there's only one side.
Shannon?
You opt out.
You are. I'm sorry. Please, no more conversation. Thank you.
I'm stealing Shannon's spot.
Go for it.
So I'm Mia Burns. I'm a student here at Lincoln High School, and I don't have anything prepared. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I do have a couple points. And I'm not coming after anyone here in this room, but I would just like to say that as a 10th grader here, I read the book, and honestly, I think maturity level is a big issue with reading this book. And if all parents could just trust their child and allow them to read this book and read all the diversity that is in it and be able to form their own opinion on the book and have educated conversations in the classroom. When in the classroom reading this book, I know that I heard so many different opinions on the book, and it allowed me to look at other students and be understanding their side of the story, as well as I hear so much worse in middle school throughout this whole book. And I know that when I was hearing that stuff and watching other students grow up, I could see whose maturity level, who actually matured from what they were hearing and who took what they were hearing and was like, oh, I have free will and I'm going to go and spread it around as well. So I think it is just a learning experience and something that kids need to just learn now instead of going into college and taking this to an actual job and not knowing anything about life. And yeah, that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Okay, Tammy Jones?
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. I detest that I have to be here tonight.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Oh.
Krista Steinmetz, you're on deck.
Okay. I don't even know where to begin. First of all, my 15-year-old doesn't need to be reading this book. His brain isn't even fully formed. Second of all, it was brought home under the guise of leadership. So we went ahead, we looked up from the author, her very own discussion notes. I'm going to read them to you. This is the Reader's Group Guide by Angie Thomas, reading and discussing. This novel can be used as a springboard for timely conversations about the following themes: racism, community, the Black Lives Matter movement, activism, family, justice, law enforcement, the complexities of gang culture, friendship, and identity. So these are not things that, well, first of all, I think we can all see leadership wasn't in there, okay? So don't send it home with my 15-year-old telling me this was a leadership theme. That was not good judgment on the district's part. Also, my son wasn't comfortable reading this. I appreciate all the kids speaking. However, as a parent, this is not appropriate, and this is not how we're teaching our child, and I would wash his mouth out with soap if he spoke like this. So this is a no-no.
Thank you, Tammy. Krista, you're up, and Mariah, and okay, A, Mariah A.
Hello. Okay, so a lot of the things that I was thinking and wanting to share tonight have been shared, so I'm not going to be redundant. I am curious why this is part of the 9th grade curriculum. It seems that it is not appropriate for a 9th grader to necessarily read. It's not, like my daughter, it's not something that she'd be prepared to read. I don't feel that we should shy away from real world topics. I don't live under a rock. I'm not bubble wrapping my kids. They deal with things day after day after day that are real life matters. But I believe that there need to be structured conversations, these debate ideas with opposing views, but in the debate classes, in social studies, in classes where it's not like mandatory reading. I think this could be done differently. I don't think it has to be mandatory reading for a language arts class. I agree that this sounds like porn. It's not something that every child is going to be comfortable reading. I'm not saying ban the book. I'm not saying close our eyes and pretend like this isn't happening. I hear the F word, fuck. I hear fuck every single day. I'm not saying that that can't be said. I'm saying that I don't need my child to be sitting in a classroom talking about this in 9th grade. I think that we could make some changes. There's different ways that this could be.
Thank you, Kristen. And then Lori Ernst, you're on deck.
So, I know you guys all heard from me last week. I'm sure you're super excited to do it again. I think what's really unclear here is that, personally, we're not here to ban a book. If your child wants to read the book, great, let them read the book. The issue here is parental respect and morals in your family. This book is not morally ethical for my child to read. I sat at the table last night and asked my daughter, how would you feel if someone called you a bitch or a hoe? Do you want to talk about condoms in the 9th grade? I asked my son, do you understand the concept of what a bulge in your pants is? I had to tell him that it was a hard-on. If my kid is reading about a woman who's putting her hands down his chest to feel the bulge in his pants, that is porn, and I don't need my kid to learn about it. I don't need him to get a hard-on in school because some book has turned him on. Okay? I am the parent. The biggest issue here is that your school did not respect or follow the policy by telling me about the book first. You went ahead, you passed it out, I didn't even hear about it from my kid. I had to learn about it from other parents. And then my kid's like, hey mom, guess what? I'm a wigger. Okay, great, why are you a wigger? Because I wear Jordans and I'm not black. Okay, other kids at school on their lunch break are making fun of this whole situation and calling each other racists. Where's the leadership, people? That is not leadership. That is you forcing a book on someone's children who never had the option. We didn't get the option. We would not be sitting here if the option was given.
Thank you, Mariah. Sarah, I have glasses, I'm sorry. H-A-N-C-H-O-T-T. Sarah? Okay. All right, you're on deck if you're here. Laura, go ahead.
Hi, I'm speaking against this book, but first I want to just reiterate what Mariah just said, and that we are not here to promote book banning. This is not about banning a book. This is about stating that this is an inappropriate book for 14 and 15-year-olds, period. If my son tries to go to a movie theater to see a rated R movie that is only allowed 2 F words and can't get in, why are we allowing a book that has 89 F words? There are rules set up in our society to protect our children, and this is a violation of those. Now, if you choose as a parent to let your child read this book, by all means do so. That is your right as a parent. But in a classroom, it's a whole different situation. Students have to opt out if they choose not to read this book because it's required reading in the main class. That is a horrible position to put these kids in. The school is supposed to support unity and inclusion. Look around. Does this look like unity? This book has done nothing but divide us and exclude the kids that are brave enough to stand up for what they believe in. They should never be put in this position by a school district. There's no reason we can't just choose a book that is neutral and actually teaches on leadership for these kids. Sorry, I have to edit my speech for time. I'm just going to say real quick, I am so proud of the kids who've chosen to opt out and not read this book, like my son. It takes an incredible amount of courage and character to stand up against your teacher, your classmates, your school administrators.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Lori. Sarah, are you here? Sarah Hanchuk? She left? Okay, thank you. Gianna Khan? You're up. And Min Draper is on deck. Is that correct? Okay, you're on deck. Okay.
Okay, hello everyone. I am Gianna. I am a senior here at LHS. And I'm not here to talk about the content of The Hate U Give that has been talked about a lot and will continue to be talked about, so I'm just here to talk about, in comparison to the books I had to read when I was a freshman in here. For one, Of Mice and Men deals with just as much sexual content and inappropriate language including the use of the N-word multiple times. The same thing is true in To Kill a Mockingbird, with even more use of the N-word. And in no way am I trying to hate on anyone else who spoke, but I did hear someone say, like, oh, this book can't be read aloud in the classroom. Neither can Of Mice and Men or To Kill a Mockingbird, clearly because use of the N-word and a lot of other profanities. Grapes of Wrath was also one I had to read, which included a man at the end, a grown man breastfeeding for some reason, I don't know. But my point is that clearly no one had a problem with those books, but now I have a problem with this one. So clearly it's not the content, it is the personal beliefs of others that feel attacked, if that makes sense. Thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute break real quick for a bathroom break for the board. Thank you. Come back at 7:25. All right. Is it Mia? Okay, got it. Mia, you are up, and Brooke Byrne, you are on deck.
Interestingly enough, my story is very similar to that of an earlier student's, which I think is enough to tell you, well, which tells you quite a bit about the impact of this novel. It is disheartening to hear people rail against this book because to me, this book reflects my real life. The main character's name is Star, and she and I are the same age. We both attend predominantly white institutions, deal with white boyfriends, and face racism from our peers and friends. And although I've never been a victim of police brutality, I know people just like me who have. I read this book as a freshman, but not as a part of an English curriculum. I fell in love with this book because it was the first book I ever read where someone like me was represented, where someone like me is the main character. It is my fervent wish that I had the opportunity to read this in my freshman year English class instead of a required novel at the time, To Kill a Mockingbird. When we finished the book, we had a discussion. I was, as per usual, the only African American in the room. Of course, most of our discussion revolved around race. During that discussion, I had to defend myself against my own classmates. Now, in my senior year, I am left to wonder if that conversation would have been different if I had been reading this book. Maybe I wouldn't have had to defend myself. Maybe if I were reading a modern book that reflects modern issues that people like myself and many more like myself have faced and could have been having these discussions. I implore the board to not remove this book from the curriculum. Allowing young African American students to read a book that reflects them is something that is absolutely invaluable. Instead of reading books in which the only black characters are portrayed as racist stereotypes, allow students to read something with a positive representation, a book where they can be seen as human. Thank you very much.
Sierra Ray, you're on deck.
Hello there, my name is Brooke. I'm a junior at Lincoln High School. I spoke here the other night, and I had never once in my life felt so invalidated by a group of adults. I spoke and was only met with catty responses from grown men saying I'm a child that does not have rights, and therefore I should not speak. This board said they wanted to hear our voices, but the second we started talking, you stopped listening. Here are 523 signatures of students wanting to keep this book in our curriculum. Keep in mind, I gathered these in one day, today. Imagine how many signatures we have if we were given a week. If you remove this book, what comes next? So you may be on this book, but you're not silencing our voices. No matter the outcome, we will continue to fight for what we believe. I just hope you'll finally hear us. This book pushes boundaries and defines your definition of appropriate. I then ask you, what do you deem appropriate? Do you find the opening scene of Romeo and Juliet, where Samson speaks of rape, appropriate? Or Curly from Of Mice and Men, keeping his hand in a glove full of lotion, or his wife, appropriate? To Gianna's point, the removal of this book should spur our evaluation of every other book in the curriculum. But if we do that, what are we left with? We're left with cookie-cutter black and white curriculum that only has a direct right and wrong. The second we teach only black and white is the second we truly have a problem. We need books like these to teach kids to form their own opinions and to have differing opinions. We are the future of America, and if we aren't allowed to develop these skills, how will we make a true impact on society? We aren't children anymore. Very soon we will be adults. Thank you.
you are on deck.
Hello, and thank you for hearing from all of us this evening. I'm not one to speak in public like this, but I think it's really important that I share with you that I have 3 white sons that I'm raising in this area. I'm a white woman, and when George Floyd was killed, and it became really clear to me that as a white person in this time in history, I needed to stop and I needed to ask myself, how do I become anti-racist? Not just the cookie cutter, like, well, I'm not racist, but how do I work to be different and teach my 3 white sons to be anti-racist? And so I read books and I watched movies, and one of them was The Hate U Give. So that was before my son read it last year here at Lincoln High School. He said it was a great book. You guys, my son doesn't like to read, okay? He enjoyed the book. I said, what else? Tell me more. What else can I share with this board? And this is his words. It's not super deep, I'm gonna warn you guys. He said, I think you should mention that if they're worried about foul language and inappropriate comments, it's nothing compared to what you will hear in high school. And I think that is the bottom line. I forced my kids a couple years ago when I watched the movie to come downstairs and watch the movie with me. And it was very begrudgingly that they sat there and watched the movie. This was like when we were all still kind of hanging out by ourselves at home a lot. And
Thank you, Sierra. Thank you, Beverly. Angela, seeing you are on deck.
My name is Beverly, but I'm reading an email from Tracy Dennis, who couldn't be here. Books are either windows or mirrors. This book is a window to a world we don't experience here in our suburban bubble. If we only read mirror books, if we only read mirror books, we only ever see our own world reflecting back to us. The truth is that there are bad cops. There's also bad teachers, bad painters, bad apples in every profession. Pretending they don't is disingenuous. Pretending our children don't hear profanity is ridiculous. Pretending our children cannot handle unpleasantness is a disservice to them. How will they handle the real world? Not the one we'd like to pretend we live in, if they don't know what's out there. I would always rather my children be prepared to face hard things than have to stick their fingers in their ears and pretend it's not real or be unprepared to navigate the world. The legacy that their students don't have a handle on what is out there in life besides what they already know, that isn't education, that's ignorance. I beg you not to ban this book. It's not only unnecessary, it's harmful, and at the end of the day, it is public education for all public, not just the ones who want it to reflect their own values. The book and the opt-out should stand. As I do not demand everyone be required to read this book, I expect the same in return, that my child have the opportunity to read it and study it in public school with choices in place for everyone. Thank you.
And Alan Burridge, you are on deck.
Hi, my name is Angela Singh. I believe that the book The Hate U Give should not be removed from the curriculum due to the reason of recognition. This book is a representation of the real world. It shows It shows the real world we live in. You may say the reason for the removal is due to sexual themes or the F word. I believe that is not the reason. Look at the other books we read, such as Romeo and Juliet, which has sexual themes as well as both physical and verbal violence. It also includes themes of death. In our curriculum, we are currently attending state requirements where kids are getting taught about human anatomy, which includes sexual themes as well as drug talk and uses, and the way people get them. Why do I have permission slips for that? It said that even in some schools, school nurses give out condoms. Why is that okay, but sexual themes in the F word in a book are affecting you? The real reason is that people are not prepared for their children to be exposed to other perspectives, like the perspective of a young black teenager. The book has more relevance than Romeo and Juliet. I'm not saying that Romeo and Juliet is a bad book. I love that book. I would just like to say why now. Why all of a sudden when a black person's perspective is not getting accounted for, everybody has a problem. The Hate U Give shows what people our day have to deal with. It is a book that can spread awareness around the world. Coming from a colored person's perspective, I believe the book should be included because it shows other races' perspectives. It also shows other cultures. I believe that other races and perspectives should be included in our curriculum. It will help kids understand others' views. When kids are taught in school, they are more likely to be understanding and actually try to understand. Many say that the causes of...
Thank you, Angela. Thank you. Alan, are you here? Alan Brewer? Okay, thank you. Enoli Enriquez? Angeline. Thank you for correcting me. And then Elena Bassetti? Bassetti. You are on deck.
So my name's Anjali Enriquez, and I come before the board not just as a member of the community, but as a Black woman raising 4 multiracial children in this district, ages 9 through 16. They're sitting over there, they're listening to what's said, and they're witnessing this history. They are Black, Asian, Hispanic, and Caucasian. My husband is a 4th-generation farmer, also over there, and great-grandson of a Japanese immigrant who also endured hostility from his white neighbors here in Placer County. I say all this so that it is known I am not speaking from a narrow frame of reference here. The main purpose of the book in question is to bring to light this current issue that the Black community has with some police from their perspective. Consequently, reading this book could be beneficial to anyone who is not in the Black community so that they can see what they experience and struggle. It examines the way society uses stereotypes of Black people to justify violence and racism against them, allowing our students to read That Hate You Give with the guidance of an educator where one can dialogue can occur, questions can be asked and answered, where diversity of viewpoints can be shared in a safe place. This is how we learn, develop, and understand not only ourselves but others out of our ethnic community. With support, open mind, a soft heart, this book can unite and change hearts. When you censor certain ideas and beliefs, you generate more xenophobic and uneducated society. This is teaching students that it's okay to stop an idea or viewpoint from being heard just because they don't agree with it. I hope you will all wholeheartedly consider your message that you'll be sending all of our children when you vote, that you make a conscious decision and land on what's true and what's right. Thank you.
And then Marnie Marin, you are on deck. I'm kind of nervous. My audience is usually younger. Okay. So, at the high school level, students should be learning about complex issues. Limiting young people's access to books does not protect them from life's difficult and challenging issues. We are doing students a disservice by not allowing them to explore different viewpoints within a safe and structured environment. This information that they're being exposed to in this book is still going to be thrown at them from other students, social media. And this information is often skewed, potentially incorrect, and even harmful. How will removing this book help the young people in the future when faced with life's challenges and opposing viewpoints? Parents absolutely have the right to guide their children's reading. But a group of parents should not be allowed to dictate what books an entire school can read. And I would like to end this by saying removing a book from the curriculum is banning a book. Thank you. Martin, okay. And then Cal Baldwin, you are next.
Hopefully I don't get a little too redundant, but I did want to speak up. I am an English teacher, English 10 teacher in our district, and I am currently teaching Fahrenheit 451 with my students. If you aren't familiar with that book, I recommend you read it. It too has seen itself on the banned book list. Ray Bradbury warned of a society that would become so fixated on technology and entertainment that education, knowledge, and even reading would be seen as unnecessary and even dangerous. Books became illegal and no one seemed to care. That is my greatest fear as I present books to my students and they resist reading. That is my greatest fear, is that they won't care. That with all of the distractions of technology and their virtual access to information that they have, that they will no longer care about the books. What we have had Tuesday night and what we have here is a group of students who do care. They don't want to take 70 years worth of steps backwards. Parents are concerned about the bias being present in the book, or there being an ulterior agenda present, and that teachers aren't giving a space for both sides of a situation to be heard. That is actually one of our essential standards, is to teach bias and assess the impact that might be present. That is the same with language. We would discuss the F word. There's a lot of language present in books, of mice and men for one.
Thank you, Morna. And on deck is Maureen Green.
You guys look familiar. You come here often? Yeah. Enough of that. I'm here now. All right. Good evening. Let me preface my statement by saying, parents, thank you for vocalizing your concern about your children. Worrying is a parent's prime job, and I commend you for participating in your children's academic careers. Now, having heard the statements of my peers, consider mine also. The extreme action of banning the hate you give from our curriculum would be infinitely less effective than creating an open dialogue with your child over the book and discussing this in your home, discussing your thoughts and theirs in a constructive environment that would provide an effective learning boost while also addressing concerns you might be having about it, right? Everybody has concerns. I have concerns. Geez, when am I going to get home? Who knows? Anyway, curfew, am I right? You are saying there is no place for this in a classroom. Okay, what's next? What I fear as a student is this flippancy regarding the eagerness to ban books. What's next? I fear that sooner than later, people will go so far as to claim that this book has no place in the library, or worse yet, has no place in this great state or great country. Before you know it, someone will come for your books too. I understand my point is extreme, yes, but if you do not see the danger that is this slippery slope, you are doomed to fall down it, to a depth you cannot be dragged back from. Protecting your children starts with hearing them out, so I do beg of you to hear me out, and consider your options. Please vote carefully. Thank you.
And Cal, you have got a future in public speaking. Yes. I'm sorry, Maureen. On deck is Darian Thompson.
Hello everybody, thank you for giving me the chance to speak today. My name is Maureen, and I want to thank everyone for their sharing all the viewpoints. I have to say, as a woman of color and a resident in Lincoln for 14 years, I have never felt a sense of belonging like today. I have in this community, and the two that have already graduated from high school never had a book written by an author that represented them.
Maureen, can you address the board, please?
Oh, sorry. Did you hear that, or do I need to repeat it? Okay. I want to say that, put aside all of the content in the book, I think this gives kids the opportunity to have difficult conversations that we often don't get a chance to have unless something prompts it. In our home, we have them. I think without having difficult conversations, we don't develop a perspective of another, and cannot develop empathy and understanding and compassion for people who have different experiences from us. They land themselves in stereotypes. To avoid that, to develop a more humane approach to all humans, we have to be educated. And I want to just leave you with a quote. Everybody's made already wonderful points. I just have to say, from Tara Brach, we evolve our consciousness by bringing a clear and kind attention to tangles of suffering. We don't avoid suffering. We don't avoid difficult topics. Thank you.
Maureen. On deck is Damien Williams.
I have seen firsthand the beautiful awareness that has come from this book. The realizations that were made by those who have never read a book like this before. My eyes were open to a community I am not a part of, but it is a community that is full of beauty and so much strength because of what they have had to face. They have always been deserving of a voice, and they always will be. You are using your blinded, unfounded ignorance to attempt to mute into silence. In the taking away of this book, you take away opinions, ideas, and the right for so many people to be represented in literature. This is censorship. For those of you who seem to be unaware of the definition, I invite you to listen closely. Censorship, the suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news, etc. that are considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security. So is this what the people represented in this book are? Obscene, politically unacceptable, and a threat to your security. There is a long history of censorship in the world we live in, and you are doing nothing but to help continue it. And there is only one logical step after banning, and that is burning. Thank you.
Spring Paul.
Good evening. My name is Damian Williams. I grew up in Berkeley, California. I'm an Army veteran. I fought in Afghanistan. I've been to Germany. And I've been around so many people who look so different from me, but we've all had something in common to where we can sit down and look at each other's viewpoints, look at each other's perspectives. I got 3 kids out here. One of them will be in the 9th grade next year. His first year out here in the 3rd grade, he had been called a nigger. He had been punched and all kind of stuff. I just went in that bathroom out there and they got porno written on the walls to say, "I'll come in your mom," or something like that. So to say that this book is inappropriate, come on, man. Everything in high school is damn near inappropriate. So you look at TikTok, you look at all this stuff on these kids' phones, man. Come on, man. We cannot ban this book, man. I think it allows these kids to get a perspective from people that don't look like them. And that's just the bottom line. You know, everybody needs perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service. Spring Paul, Spring, are you here? I know you. I don't see you. Okay, Spring is gone. Amelia Bustos? Amelia, are you here? Okay, and then Josh Bartlett, you are on deck.
As a current junior at 12 Bridges High School, I believe we should keep this book in the English 9 curriculum. As a person of color who lives in this community, I've encountered many closed-minded individuals, and this book is a great opportunity to open a discussion and includes those people and helps them see another perspective. Saying that its language is too vulgar is just a scapegoat to cover your racism. You argue the point of too much cussing as if your child doesn't say words like fuck, shit, and bitch behind your back, as well as hear it from your own mouth. Saying that your child is not ready to read a book with themes of police brutality, racism, and sexual themes is extremely privileged and shows your ignorance, because there are many people your child's age and younger having to deal with it in their own real lives. You don't have to agree with the book, but it's more beneficial for everyone to read it. It allows people to see from a perspective they most likely have never even thought about considering the predominantly white population in this area. We cannot hide from difficult conversations because we want to. They're difficult for a reason. They're important. It's not only important but essential to bring up these controversial issues in a controlled academic environment because it allows a healthy discussion. This book is beautifully written, and I can still remember the very first time I read it in 7th grade 5 years ago, and how much it changed me as a person. If we as a community choose to teach this book, it not only opens the discussion about how black people are treated in this country, but it also opens up a conversation about how other minorities are treated in this country, which is necessary if we want to progress as a society. Thank you.
And on deck, the last one, Alan T.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak right now. From what I've gathered, what I'm hearing, I guess we're hearing that anything goes, that standards aren't needed anymore, that appropriateness of content in a public setting doesn't matter. I mean, I'll just read some examples here. There's a student parent handbook 2022-2023 that the high schools have here. Detention will be assigned for students who defy basic rules of conduct such as class disturbances, defiancy, forgery, dress code violations, profanity. And then under the California Education Code 48900, committed an obscene act or engaged in habitual profanity and vulgarity is can be a disciplinary action to that. I mean, there has to be standards. The book, and I'll quote some others, has content in it that is just not appropriate for certain age levels. And we have standards for reasons. That doesn't mean that we can't learn about these things outside of public settings, but this is a public setting. And so, I mean, if these standards here that are in the handbook don't matter, then throw them out. Dress codes, throw them out.
Thank you, Josh. Alan? Did I say that right? Is it Alan? Alan? Is that right? Aline. I had to ask for the last name too.
That's okay. I'm used to it after 56 years. So yeah, I come from a family that, I'm a first generation. My parents were immigrants, so I know surprisingly all about racism perhaps or whatever. But you know, these kids are extremely articulate, so I commend you. But they're just a small portion of over 2,000 students at Lincoln High School. So I'm not sure that we're hearing both sides to that voice of our children, emphasizing what's important to them. I really like what this military man gave us. You know, I understand that there's a racial problem perhaps in our world, but I don't think it's the way to study that in English, in an language arts topic. You know, the profanity and the language that's used in this book clearly doesn't, you know, abide by the rules of the board. And I'm just appalled with what I heard tonight. Using the vulgarity, these kids are so easy using the F word and the C word and all these other words that, you know, I don't want to hear even walking down the street. They get it. We don't need to be teaching them in a book what's happening in real life. And parents, you know what? These are children, and they do need parents to guide them. And the parents need the support of our school board to help guide them as well.
Well done, everybody. Thank you very much for the respect that you gave in listening to everybody. We did receive 10 responses to the comments that we are also going to put into the record tonight. So I think the next thing is the presentation. Superintendent Collins.
So the next aspect is certainly not to debate the book itself. It's to ultimately remind our board that we have policies that govern the work that staff does in the district, and the policies that are established are what guide the work that is done within our educational services program in conjunction with our teachers and other stakeholders, which include parents and students and administration. And so very briefly, I'm going to ask Tillman Hayer, our attorney, to just kind of briefly overview aspects of our policies that do govern the work that occurs within our district. And then Ms. Haladin, our principal here at Lincoln High School, has graciously agreed to represent the staff work and provide an overview specific to the policies that do govern the work that does occur in the school district, from state level down to specifically this book and this unit, and how it has adhered to the policies that have been set by the board, so that the board can make an informed decision that will ensure that there isn't an impact that might signal that we operate in a way that's not consistent with the policies that have been set to govern the work that is occurring in the district. So, Tillman?
Thank you, members of the board, for allowing me to address you tonight at this meeting. I want to start talking about our policies right at the beginning of our policies, Board Policy 0100, talking about the philosophy of our district. One of the core policies of the district is that every student should have the opportunity to receive a quality education, and that's why we're all here to support that mission. Instructional materials and curriculum are, of course, at the heart of the mission of this district to provide quality education, and to that end, the board and the district has policies outlining the guiding principles and processes for adopting and revising this curriculum and instructional materials. And this is broadly contained in the 6000 series of board policies. And as outlined in Board Policy 6000, one of the organizing principles in the development and review of the curriculum is ensuring teacher, administrator, student, and parent involvement and participation in that process. Our policies refer to curriculum evaluation and development as an ongoing process, and that the selection of and evaluation of the instructional materials shall be coordinated with curriculum development and evaluation as well. Teachers who are, of course, directly involved in presenting curriculum and instructional materials to students should also be substantially involved in the process by which the board considers changing instructional materials. In recognition that curriculum and instruction reflect, quote, the desires of the community as reflected in our board policy, the district's policies and procedures give the board various tools and options on how to consider input from all stakeholder groups. In considering changes to instructional materials, these policies with regards to 6141 and 6161.1 outline the importance of considering input and recommendations from all stakeholders in our school community. Such groups can include parents, community members, teachers, administrators, and also, very importantly, students themselves. The board has various options in how it can consider stakeholder input, such as by the way of public meetings, as we're having today, convening a curriculum review or instructional materials committee, considering public comment, and engaging other advisory committees. Our policies recognize that the Western Placer community has a diversity of opinions and perspectives, and to that extent, the district is required to seek input from stakeholders with diverse backgrounds and perspectives under its policies. Because curriculum and instructional materials are so fundamental to the core mission of educating students, policies read as a whole contemplate a multifaceted and deliberative process engaging various stakeholders and assisting the board in making the ultimate determination on which curriculum and instructional materials best support our students. School boards are given the authority under state law and also board policy to decide curriculum, and a public input process and thoughtful comment, as we are having tonight, helps school boards best decide how to serve their students. Thank you.
No questions? All right, thank you.
So as Ms. Ladden is bringing up her PowerPoint presentation, I know that there were some comments about the validity of the survey. I am going to share the results of it because we did indicate that we would, and I want to honor the statement that we already put out in terms of how it was put out. Mr. Mall, who's our Director of Personnel, Emma Oler, our Communications Officer, and myself watched the results as they were coming in, and we did receive 1,500 responses. The first 500 came in the first hour, right immediately after the survey was put out. I know that somebody mentioned that they didn't have the opportunity to submit the survey. We did receive information about concerns of validity and whether or not it was being pushed out the next day for people to take it multiple times. After the first 500 responses came in, the next 1,000 responses did not vary. The first 500 response significantly. We have reason to feel, based on our review of the responses coming in, that given that first hour the results didn't change significantly after that they were likely indicative of the parents receiving that push out from the texts and the emails immediately and responding very quickly. And if there was any potential double, ultimately that could have occurred in any of the responses, and then the posts that we did see on social media that ultimately drove us to shut down. We shut it down very quickly after we saw it and between the time in which the post occurred And when we shut it down, there were about 15 responses, and it did not at all impact the results at that time. So while I appreciate that there could be reason to be concerned, and there certainly, I wouldn't say that it's 100% valid, or that, wording wise, I completely appreciate and respect that, but it is data that we did collect, and I do want to share it. So the board did receive all of the comments because there was the open-ended aspect, and there were 747 responses from our community that the board has received and had an opportunity to review briefly. In terms of percentages of results, the survey indicated from the 1,521 responses that 48.8% of our community, those that took the survey, support the use of the materials with no concerns whatsoever. 6.8% have some reservations but trust the district and its teachers to use the materials well. 8.9% have strong reservations but believe that an opt-out is necessary, and 35.6% believe that it is inappropriate and should not be in our curriculum.
All right. First off, I have to give a huge shout out to my custodial team, to Mr. Hank Florence and Mr. Sebastian. They rallied in a way that just even blew my socks off to make this meeting available and accessible to our community. So thank you, Mr. Florence. Thank you to our custodial team that's running around for making this happen. Second, my role this evening is just to be a representative of a variety of communities that are represented by Lincoln High School, Trowbridge High School, as well as the District Office Ed Services team. The board has a digital copy of this presentation that was sent to you, as well as a print copy. The digital copy has hyperlinks all in it, so if you want to check out things further, it's all there available for you. Third, I would say that there are several staff here from our English 9 team, specifically from Lincoln, from Trowbridge's, and as well as district office staff that are available to answer any questions. I am not an expert in all these spaces, I'm just the spokesperson. I will do the best I can and defer to my team, our team, whenever possible. I'm doing this speaking today, which is crazy because I'm like the fastest talker on the planet, but Heather doesn't have a voice, so it was one or the other, so. Literally. And then lastly, I just want to acknowledge that the transition of rooms means the presentation's behind you, so you can follow along over here if that's helpful for you. So you can kind of place where we are. So there were several areas of interest that were presented at the last meeting. So first we're going to talk about the curriculum and instructional material selection process. I'll then speak about the unit material selection. Then we'll speak about the instructional activities for this unit on leadership. And lastly, we'll speak about how we support safety and equity of voice in the classroom. This is a quote that was actually read and given to me just this week from a staff member who attended an AVID training in SCOE. And I'm not going to read it to you, but I'm going to leave it up for just about a few seconds and let you take a perusal at it, because I think that it is relevant to the conversation we're having today. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is how the materials that are in our English 9 curriculum are selected. And again, I'm not an expert in this, but I'm just going to point out a few board policies as well as educational code that guide how the school board helps us make decisions alongside us as we're making decisions about how to provide instruction to our students. First is board policy in AR 6161.1, which speaks to the selection and evaluation of instructional materials. And it specifically addresses the way the district reviews material and selects and adopts curriculum. So there's a lot of language in there that speaks to that. It also indicates that the complaints should be addressed through a process which is outlined specifically in Board Policy 1312.2. The board policy also indicates that instructional materials should present a broad spectrum of knowledge and viewpoints, and it references a variety of ed codes that indicate that our materials must accurately portray society's cultural and racial diversity. The second set of materials that I want to point out for you is Board Policy in AR 6141, which relates to curriculum development and evaluation. And this particular board policy addresses how curriculum should be evaluated and selected, and it indicates that the board has an expectation that we offer a well-articulated curriculum and that the board has the opportunity to review our recommendation as well as to participate in an evaluation process of our recommended curriculum. The next set of board policy is 6161.11, which speaks to supplementary instructional materials. And if that terminology is unfamiliar for the board, supplemental materials are things that are not in our adopted curriculum, but that supplement or augment what we're teaching. So often that looks like articles, video clips, and other things that are not given to us by the publisher, but that supplement the work that we're doing. So although the Hate U Give is not a supplementary text, it's actually a board-adopted curriculum, we do use supplemental text in our classrooms and in our libraries to meet the diverse educational needs of students and to reflect a condition of cultural pluralism. There's also a board policy related to controversial issues, which is Board Policy 6144, and it speaks to the recognition that controversial issues may be included in curriculum as a part of adopted curriculum and should be designed to develop students' critical thinking skills, their ability to discriminate between fact and opinion, the respect for others, as well as the understanding and tolerance of diverse points of view. So when we think about how we adopt curriculum, it starts at actually the state level, and the State Department of Education drives the standards, the frameworks, as well as vets and identifies appropriate curriculum options for schools to consider. We get a menu of curriculum options, and then teachers go through with stakeholder input in order to evaluate all the different options that the state has pre-identified as being appropriate given the standards, the framework, and the values of the state of California. Second, the curriculum developers take all of those materials, all of the standards and frameworks, and they design and publish curriculum that's based on those state standards frameworks, as well as on student development theory. So they're thinking really critically about not only what are the standards, but some standards loop up from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. So they're thinking critically about what does the standard look like in kindergarten versus 6th grade versus 12th grade. And they're developing materials to guide our teachers in order to be sure that we're providing appropriate curriculum that is in line with students' developmental needs. Once we have that information about the framework as well as the options for curriculum, the district then engages in a process where teachers use a collaborative approach to review curriculum as well as to collect parent input and student input. Often this district process includes a piloting process that happens in classrooms so that we can try before we buy, if you will, and it gives an opportunity for teachers to really see how does this material function and work in the actual classroom setting. Then, once a decision has been articulated and thought through, that's brought to the school board, and you will have the opportunity to provide guidance to the district about that through your board policies and regulations. And your responsibility per board policy 6141 is to adopt a curriculum that reflects our district's philosophies, responds to student needs and abilities, and is consistent with the requirements of law. Insofar as possible, the curriculum should also reflect the desire of the community and the needs of society as a whole. And then finally, once the board does approve our curriculum, our educators then get down to the hard work, which is actually figuring out how to do the teaching in the classroom. And they spend like gazillions of hours thinking about how to build curricular plans, how to do so in a professional learning environment. They're going through consistent cycles of inquiry where they're evaluating whether or not the curriculum is meeting the objective needs, are kids learning the standards that we're expected to teach, and then refining and refining and refining. And we refine all the way until we do the process all over again. In particular, our teachers really take pride, in my opinion, on reflecting on student learning outcomes and making sure that they are building curriculum that best meets the needs of students per the standards and the framework that we're obligated to teach from the state of California. The last thing that I would indicate is that when we're deciding on curriculum materials, there is a process for complaints and concerns, and that's outlined through the board policy 1312.2, and it talks about how concerns about the adoption process should be managed after the adoption process is completed. So the Western Cluster School Board formally adopted a material that was approved by the state of California called Study Sync, and that was approved back in 2017 for implementation in the 2017-18 year, and it was going to be used, it was adopted to be used through the 2024-25 school year. So we're about halfway through the adoption of this 9th grade curriculum, which is called Study Sync. We'll refer to Study Sync repetitively throughout the presentation. So from 2015 to 2017, the Lincoln High School English team, which was the only English team that existed at that time, with district oversight, went through this adoption process. The materials were piloted by multiple teachers at Lincoln High School prior to the adoption. There has been staff turnover, obviously, since the curriculum was adopted, but our teams continue to make adjustments through a collaborative process with the adoption until this new adoption cycle comes up. So the district, through this, recognized that there was a need to have this continual dialogue. So they actually supported our teachers in developing a 5-year plan within the language arts department to support this work. And part of this came because we knew the new high school was coming, and we knew that we weren't going to have all of our teachers in one building anymore, and there was a need to be sure there was a collaborative process that bridged both high schools. So through this collaborative effort, it's possible that not everybody's in agreement, right? That's how collaboration works. Like, we're trying to come up with the best option that we can all live with. But the team does recognize that the decisions are made for both Lincoln High School as well as for 12 Bridges High School. Going forward, our schools will be engaging in a joint adoption process where the district is leading a process that happens simultaneously at both high schools to lead to one piece of curriculum that is adopted for both schools. Right now, the very first joint high school adoption process has recently started, and that's in our World Languages department. So we're doing that hard work right now, and it's happening. All right. The second thing I want to speak about is specifically this unit, which has created a lot of concern in the community and amongst the board, and this is the study sync unit that's titled Leadership. So beginning in 2021, as I mentioned, the district directed the high school to engage in a 5-year strategic plan process to encourage collaborative dialogue between Lincoln High School and 12 Bridges High School as we knew the new high school was coming on board. The plan called for 4 priorities that were established by the school district. The first one was that both high schools should teach 1 full text per quarter. So what that means is that every quarter, 1 book should be read from start to finish in the classroom. Second is that the full text must be common between Lincoln High School and 12 Bridges High School. Third was that 75% of the material must come from within the adopted curriculum, so from within Study Sync in the case of freshman English. And then fourth, that there was a priority to diversify text choice using the lens of quantitative, qualitative, and reader and task. And these ideas of quantitative, qualitative, and reader and task are established in the Language Arts and ELD framework, which is linked for you, and it's available on page 70 of that link. So the topic of the topic that we're talking about in the Study Sync curriculum is the topic of leadership. And the school district has established 2 essential questions that they want students to be learning and be able to respond to at the conclusion of the unit. The first one is, what role should a leader play? And the second is, what are the responsibilities of leadership? So when our teachers are teaching over the course of a quarter, everything they're doing is about trying to get kids ready to have a thoughtful response to those 2 questions through their supplementary and district adopted curriculum materials. So up on the screen and in your packet on page 13 is the final assessment prompt that 12 Bridges High School plans to use this year in order to assess the leadership unit. So they're using an article, and then the students will be asked to produce a piece of writing. So the prompt is, using your novel, write a 5-paragraph essay and discuss how your main character compares or contrasts with the qualities of a leader based on the article, What Does It Mean to Be a Leader by Dr. Josh Axe. So that's what 12 Bridges is anticipating using at the end of this quarter to assess a student understanding and comprehension of the leadership unit. Lincoln High School has a different final assessment prompt, and that's okay. Like, that's not one of the tight things from the school district. It's okay for us to have different prompts as long as they speak to the same essential questions. So Lincoln High School's final assessment prompt is to write a literary analysis of The Hate U Give, in which you examine the theme of leadership and the ways in which Angie Thomas conveys her message about the role and responsibilities of a good leader. Choose a character from the novel that exemplifies the characteristics of a leader in your opinion. Be sure to include at least 2, and that's big, bold, with the number and the word, quotes from the novel to support your claims. Your literary analysis should answer the following questions, and you'll see that the 2 essential questions are listed below. So I'm not going to read this to you, but I'm going to leave this up for a moment and give you a chance to read it. This is one student's essay conclusion. Lincoln High School, and I'll speak to this in a little bit, actually taught this book last fall. So this is actual student writing, one student's essay conclusion from their final assessment from the leadership unit. So I'll pause for a minute to let you in the audience review that conclusion. It's on page 15. Yeah, I apologize, I should have clarified. and then we're going to flip to the second one, which is on slide 16, and this is a second student response to the same prompt. This was taught at Lincoln High School. And I apologize, I think I may have said that we taught this book last fall. We actually taught it last winter. It was part of our quarter 3 unit in the 2021-22 year, so I apologize for misspeaking. But this is a second student piece, and I'll pause for a moment for you to read it. Give you about 10 more seconds. All right, so as we mentioned, this unit is about leadership and this curriculum is adopted from StudySync. And so I want to take a minute to share with you some information about the novels that were presented in the adopted curriculum to use as full text novels for the freshman English. So there's a chart on page 17, it's up on the screen. On the left side, there are 4 novels that were options through the adopted curriculum for us to use. The first one was The Odyssey, the second was Bless Me Ultima, the third was 1984, and the fourth option was The Hate You Give. We did not choose to use the book The Odyssey at Lincoln High School last year because another classic, Romeo and Juliet, is taught in the unit prior. And so we wanted to have a diversity of texts, and so teaching 2 classics just wasn't the right move for our team. We do teach excerpts at Lincoln High School from The Odyssey. The second book is Bless Me Ultima. This is also not our primary novel, but we do teach excerpts from this novel at Lincoln High School. This text was not chosen because it is written by a Chicano author, and the team teaches The House on Mango Street earlier in the school year, and that is written by a Chicano author. And so again, in the spirit of having a diversity of texts, this text was not chosen as our primary novel. The third text that was an option was the text 1984. Again, we teach excerpts from this at Lincoln High School, and it was read by our seniors up until 2021. We did not select this text because it was found to not be particularly engaging for students, let alone freshmen. So the teachers know that it's just not going to go well, and they want to make sure it's a productive use of their time. The fourth option presented by StudySync was The Hate You Give. And it was identified as a primary novel, and it was chosen because, number 1, it was recommended by our adopted curriculum for this unit. Number 2, it allows our students to examine excerpts from additional other novels, which we felt was valuable for that diversity of text. And number 3 is it accomplishes the priority of our district to diversify the text taught and the guidelines outlined in several board policies, which are listed for you. So some may wonder, well, what's the relevance of this text to our topic and our essential questions? So one thing that our staff have really valued about the book, The Hate You Give, is that there are multiple types of leaders and multiple individual leaders that are depicted in this book. And something that is valued about this book is that these leaders are representative of various communities. There are perspectives presented of leadership from people of various ages, various races, various experiences, and various professions. And that was valued because the theme of the unit is leadership. Second, this book, The Hate You Give, is relevant, relatable, and written in contemporary vernaculars. A very smart person whose name is Mike Mall, who used to be an English teacher, an assistant principal and principal at Lincoln High School. He was an English teacher for many years. Gave Heather and I this information. He said, to actively depict the environment of the main character, some authors use language and imagery that makes the story more understandable and relatable. And so we felt that that was a relevant reason to use The Hate You Give in our materials. In addition, this book speaks specifically to the state and our district goals of effectively teaching inclusive curriculum, including controversial curriculum. And there's several board policies there's listed for you to reference. When we were preparing this, and again, my goal is just to provide you with information, but I can't not acknowledge the way that this book speaks to people and the way that it supports inclusivity in our schools. So it is important that our texts reflect the experience of all students. Every student at Lincoln High School and Trowbridges should feel heard, feel seen, and feel valued in our schools. Second is that some students feel unsafe and unseen when we read texts that do not illustrate their experience. and our curriculum must be representative. Our curriculum, not a book, but our curriculum must be representative of all communities in our schools, including our underrepresented groups. Excuse me. As educators, it's our responsibility to create a safe learning space for all students, and we use things like the Youth Development Framework, which you all are intimately familiar with, to support this priority. Our teachers work very, very, very hard to create safe spaces where students can discuss diverse perspectives and where all views can be respected. And lastly, our teachers want students to be interested. They want them to be engaged, they want them to be excited, because it's a long 90 minutes if they're not. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So you've seen, the board has seen this survey. Our student board member from Lincoln shared this with you last week. This is very specific to Lincoln High School because Lincoln was the only school that has taught this book prior this year. So this is a ranking of interest and engagement from current 10th grade students who had the opportunity to read this book in 9th grade, or to read all of our books in 9th grade. And it's evident that The Hate U Give was the #1 best book in the freshman experience, followed by Romeo and Juliet, which made our English teachers very, very happy. And then followed by The House on Mango Street, and then finally we do a choice novel unit, and that was the 4th most valued unit in the 4 units we teach, and we taught last school year at Lincoln High School. I want to be very clear that this is only representative of Lincoln High School perspectives. So I've alluded to this before, but we introduced this unit, this leadership unit, and this text in particular to our freshman students in Q3 of last school year, the 2021-22. One student of all of our over 300 freshmen spoke directly to their teacher and asked to opt out of the book, and we were able to accommodate that. We worked it out. It was not a problem, and it went well, and the student was able to achieve their essential learning based on the writing that they produced. They actually chose to read the text in 1984, which is another one of the adopted curriculum materials. Throughout the unit, Lincoln High School received positive feedback from students and parents about the use of this novel in grade 9. 12 Bridges chose not to teach this book last year, right? I understand that, and the reason for that is because they were opening a brand new school. There's a lot going on at that school, and they made a conscious decision that was supported by the team at Lincoln High School to hold for 1 more year, make sure that they were settled, as well as to be sure that all the English teachers at 12 Bridges High School last year had the opportunity to read the book and be sure that they felt comfortable and confident teaching the book in a way that promoted safety in the classroom. As we approach this school year, the 12 Bridges team agreed to integrate the text The Hate U Give into their curriculum this year. And they remain in favor of including the novel as an option in our leadership unit, even in light of community feedback. And I believe they've sent you a letter to that effect. I also want to make sure that it's clear that every teacher at Lincoln High School and 12 Bridges High School informs parents that this book is being taught through the inclusion of our syllabus. The book is listed in the syllabus, which goes out to every student and is shared with families again through back to school materials. So again, this is some feedback that is exclusive to Lincoln High School because we're the only school that has taught this book over the course of the year through its entirety at this point. So there's a couple of quotes here from some parents. This is the only feedback in writing that any of my English 9 teachers received last year. So these are those 3 things, and this is what they are. So I'm going to give you a moment to read those 3 quotes. They're on page 22. Now, I have not seen the written feedback that was produced in the survey that went out to the community, but I think I heard Carrie mention there were over 700 comments that were shared, and you all have that, so that would be more representative of what the community feels now. These 3 quotes were specifically from Lincoln High School families last year. All right, the next topic we're going to discuss is instructional activities, because that was another point of question that was brought to us by one of our board members. So our focus is giving students the opportunity to think critically. It is not our focus, nor is our job, nor is our responsibility to tell students what to think. That would be inappropriate, it would be unprofessional, and it would be against the tenets of being an educator. And that's outlined by Board Policy 6144. In your materials on page 24, and it's easier to link to it, you'll see a curriculum map that is a part of the 5-year planning process. This is a joint curriculum map that exists between Lincoln High School and 12 Bridges High Schools. The map is not complete. It's a 5-year process. We're actively building it, but that's linked there for you. In addition, I've linked for you the pacing guides with all the activity details from Lincoln High School last year as well as what we anticipate doing at Lincoln High School this year. Please keep in mind that Lincoln High School has not started teaching this book. It is not our plan to teach this book until Q4. We do not plan to teach this book until April. 12 Bridges High School started sooner than we did, and so I just want to be very transparent about that. In addition, there's also some links in your materials that is the pacing guide for 12 Bridges, as well as a folder of instructional materials, so you can see exactly the worksheets and materials that students are being exposed to for the book that you give at 12 Bridges High School right now. You may recall I've given you so much information that one of the district's expectations is that 75% of materials must come from adopted curriculum, which is study sync in the case of freshman English. 12 Bridges High School is using 3 additional supplementary materials. One is Dr. John Axe's What Does It Mean to Be a Leader? And the article is linked there for you. And you might recall that this is the article that their final assessment prompt is based on. Second, they're using an alternative text, which is called A Town Like Alice by Norway, as well as open-ended internet research to help identify and speak to 3 teen leaders locally I believe it's in the country as well as globally. Is that right? Thank you. 12 Bridges is also providing instruction to address the leadership theme that is a part of this unit, including the ancillary materials provided in Study Sync. They're using Socratic seminars to foster dialogue in the classroom. They're using self-reflection on engagement after every single lesson, as well as discussion board posts. And they're using, I think, something that I thought was kind of cool, that's a trait tracker, where they're keeping track as they are engaging with different pieces of writing and material, different traits that make someone an effective leader, or maybe where they've missed the mark. I think that's the language they use, is missing the mark. And that's, that trait tracker comes from Dr. Axe's text, What Does It Mean to Be a Leader? Again, the final assessment prompt is available on page 26. I'm not going to read it to you again, but just so you have it all in one place. At Lincoln High School, we're using several supplementary materials. And again, these are things we used last year, and they're in the process, my team is in the process of evaluating what they're going to use this year. But last year, they used a guided adult and peer interview process so that students could consider what does it mean to be a leader. They use something called a visual dialectical journal via Google Slides, and it is very easily modified for any text, and there's a link to that for you, but it's basically a Google slide, and for every slide you're listing a photograph, or like you're finding a picture that represents what you read and what it means to you, and then identifying a quote from the text that really spoke to you in that section of the text. They're also using a couple of YouTube videos, one that's called A Conversation with the Police, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, Episode 9, which features police from Petaluma, California. And then second, a YouTube video that's called Inky Johnson's Inspirations. And I don't know Inky Johnson very well, but I understand that he's a former athlete that was injured and now has used his voice and his platform in order to support diversity and awareness and for young people. In addition, we use materials from Study Sync for every single text that Study Sync recommends. And we do have some planned changes for this year. The planned changes have really nothing to do about what's happening in our community, but really are about what we learned from last year that worked and didn't work, and the maturity of our freshmen this year, which is different than the maturity of our freshmen last year, believe it or not. And I hope you do, because it's significant. It's a different crop of freshmen this year than last year, which is wonderful. We do love our 10th graders, though. They're a spicy group. So the instructional materials changes that we anticipate making in April is, one, we plan to use literature circles and Socratic seminars in order to read and process this material. It allows potentially for multiple texts to be read concurrently in the classroom if needed. Second, we will not be reading the text out loud, which we did do last year. And third, last year we showed the film, The Hate U Give, and the teachers reported to me they didn't think that was a valuable use of instruction time because the movie does not depict leadership in the way that the book does, and so it just wasn't appropriate. So we're not going to be including that this year. And again, I have that final assessment prompt, which I believe that we plan to use the same assessment prompt this year as we did last year. All right. The last thing I want to talk about, and oh my gosh, we're just going on and on and on, is about supporting safety and equity of voice in the classroom, but this is really important. So we are providing quite a few proactive supports, and this is starting on page 30. So some of the proactive supports that our freshman English teachers are using is they establish classroom norms at the beginning of every school year, and they revisit those norms throughout the school year. They're posted in the classroom. The students built those norms together as a classroom community, and they revisit those norms in order to reflect the themes of the units that they're studying. Our classes are designed to be relationship-oriented and respect-oriented. Certainly, sometimes that doesn't happen the way we want it to, but that is what we are aiming to design and we're aiming to facilitate. Second is students are explicitly told not to use the language that is foul or inappropriate out loud in class. Third is that when requested by guardians, 12 Bridges students have been taking their instruction in a different location from a credentialed language arts teacher. In addition, Lincoln High School has planned these literature circles where peers are grouped and reading the same book together. The way literature circles work is that students as a team decide how far they're going to read, so they're kind of driving their own instruction with some guidance from their teacher. And then conversations about the text are taking place in small groups. The instructors move around, they're able to assess students' learning based on listening to the conversations and asking additional probing questions and monitoring their progress. At 12 Bridges, they've developed classrooms that they feel are safe, where students can ask questions and can share insight. Students engage in Socratic seminars, and the teachers again monitor the seminars to be sure that all voices are heard. And after every seminar, and this is available in the links of the 12 Bridges materials, they have a pretty cool self-guided rubric where students are providing self-related feedback to how they engaged in their classroom experience and how they learned from their peers and what worked and didn't work for them, for themselves, as well as from their classmates. So this allows them to continue to think about self-reflection and leadership. Also, and I think this is very important, both high schools use, and like high schools across the country, use modeling to demonstrate how to engage in difficult conversations. Difficult conversations are difficult, they're not easy, and students don't know how to do it. And part of our job is to help them understand how they might do it in a way that they feel like they have voice, in a way that they're hearing and understanding diverse perspectives that they may not agree with. They can hear and listen to them proactively and actively and with respect to make their own opinions. So we are engaging and modeling around critical thinking all year long, but it is explicitly done related to this particular unit because we know that the material in this particular book could strike a chord for some people. In addition, Study Sync provides us, and is attached to the very back of your packet, like a 6 or 7 page document that talks about how to address sensitive content, and it provides instructional support, strategies, resources, and tools for our teachers to reference if they're coming up against a difficult set of conversations or they're not sure how to handle something. Now, as much as we want to be proactive and we want everything to be sunshine and roses, sometimes it doesn't work that way, and we know that, like, we're high school teachers and educators, like, it's a wild world out there. So reactively, if a student were to overhear a student using inappropriate language or harassing or bullying other students for their beliefs, then we would refer to our discipline matrix, which is published in our student handbooks in order to provide student accountability. This could include discussions, parent contact, or even removal from the classroom. And that is something that we do as we need to. Ms. Pierce, Heather Pierce has shared with me that there have been no student-reported nor teacher-observed instances of bullying or harassment based on book choice at Lincoln High School last year, nor at 12 Bridges High School this year. I know that we've heard from some parents that said that's not the case, and we want to hear that, and that's when they reach out to their administrator or to their teacher, even better, to say, I heard this happened, and we need to address it, and the teacher will address it and will come to their administrator for support as needed. 12 Bridges High School teachers, in fact, have reported very positive responses between peers regarding student and guardian choice of what text they're reading. In addition, we have a tool called stopit.com, and that link is listed down on the bottom of page 33 for you. This is an anonymous reporting tool that students and guardians can use to report issues, anything. Like, it's not just about this. This wasn't created for this book. It's just a tool that we have so students can report information anonymously to the school administration. So in conclusion, we've talked a bit about instructional materials and how we select them, about unit material selection, about our instructional activities, as well as how we work to support safety and equity of voice in the classroom. I'm going to leave this quote back up on the screen, and I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have. Again, I may not have the answers, but I can defer to my incredible team and the team of 12 Bridges to help answer questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jen.
My pleasure.
That was very comprehensive.
Well, thank you. I do try to be thorough.
Okay. Are there any questions for Jen?
I have a couple.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
You said that both.
Use your microphone.
Oh, sorry. You said that both schools are working collaboratively, both English departments, and so they're using the same textbooks, correct?
Generally speaking, that's true, but that's not always the case. And so the district's priorities indicate that we're supposed to have one shared novel, which is The Hate U Give, as well as other priorities. But not everything is lockstep between the high schools. Not everything is even lockstep between classrooms.
Yeah. So here's my follow-up question to that. Would one school be able to choose a different book as part of their leadership unit?
Well,
versus the other one.
Sure, I understand.
To suit the more further demographic of students, if they wanted to.
Sure. Well, what I would
Can I please respect?
What I would offer is that the school board has adopted StudySync as the material that our students are supposed to be learning from in English 9. And there are 4 core text novels that are chosen. The alternative text that Trowbridge's is offering is actually not one of the 4 core units. It's not one of the adopted, no, it's not. It's not one of the adopted materials that the board has approved. The Hate U Give is one. In addition, Odyssey, 1984, and Bless Me All Tomorrow.
Okay.
So I would add also
as a reminder that in our board policy, it specifically states that it is a well-articulated course of study, a district articulated. And so while we certainly want to ensure that teachers have some professional autonomy within their own classroom and that sites have some autonomy, it's important that we also adhere to the policy that does indicate that we're going to ensure that it is a well-articulated course of study, not just for a particular school site, but for the entirety of the district. And Lincoln High and Trowbridge High School are experiencing this for the first time because we had one high school. And so their well-articulated course of study was Lincoln High School's well-articulated course of study. And so now they are feeling ultimately the growing pains that our 2 middle schools and our 8 elementary schools have been experiencing for years, and how they have been working together to ensure that it's well articulated across the district.
At the end of the day, the most important priority is that the materials that we teach from support the standards and the framework that's outlined by the state of California.
Okay, Andy has a question.
Thank you for all that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What would book choice look like? Because I'm not sure I understand that.
Sure. So we have a novel study approach that we use in quarter 1. Did you all do it in quarter 1 too? Yeah. So we have a quarter 1 choice unit where students there's an essential theme, and I don't have those details with me, but there's an essential theme, and the teachers have selected a series of books that respond to that theme. Students have the opportunity to have some choice in the books they're reading. In those situations, the teachers are passing out a variety of books. There might be, I think, how many did we have? How many books? 8? So Lincoln High School had 8 choices. How many did Trowbridge's have? 4? Okay, so we had 8 choices for our choice unit. Trowbridge's had 4 choices for their choice unit, and students got to pick from amongst those. The schools did it a little bit differently, but essentially every student was given the opportunity to preview a little bit of every book and then make a decision about the one they wanted to really dig into deep. Some students, especially, I can't speak for Trowbridge's, but like our honor students might have done maybe 2 texts instead of 1 text. But then the teachers because it's all based on an essential set of questions, the teachers are generating curriculum where students might be talking between, like amongst one book or across books about how those themes are relevant and are represented in their texts.
But that sounds like a separate than the required text, right? So you have kind of a choice section.
Yeah.
But then this particular textbook, when I hear people say, well, why can't they read a different book? Maybe the class continues to read this one, but some young people choose to pick a different book. What would that look like?
Well, and I'm going to let Heather speak to that a bit, but the reality is that we need to provide one text that every student's reading between both high schools every quarter. And so the choices would, I would assume then, be limited, sorry? Right. So if we were to offer a choice book, it would be from one of those 4 study sync options, I would assume. Now, as Heather's mentioning, there is the option that 75% of our material should come from the study sync, but 25% could come from without, so there's a possibility it could happen there. Lincoln hasn't done a choice unit for this particular unit, so I'm going to let Heather speak because she can speak more to how that's actually happening at 12 Bridges High School. I don't want to speak for you, but it wasn't the intent to do it that way. That's just what has evolved over time. Is that accurate to say? Your choice unit for this particular unit? Okay, I'm just going to stop now.
So we offer a choice unit. So there's 4 corners, and 75% of it needs to come from study sync. So that allows for one of those quarters to provide some student choice. And so one of the reasons that we allow student choice is because we recognize that students that choose the books they engage with tend to engage at a higher level and with more want and need to do so. So we provided a choice unit. In talking with my 9th grade teachers after their choice unit, they said that they felt that students actually were less engaged because everything was fragmented. There weren't a ton there was an overall unit, but there were very different topics happening in all the different books that they were reading.
Thank you for that. Could you repeat? I'm just kidding. I want to talk quickly about the opt-out, right? Is an opt-out required by Ed Code?
I'm not aware that there's a need to have an opt-out required, but I'll defer to Carrie, who's probably more familiar.
The board more recently updated, and it was definitely not all 5 of you because 2 of you have been more recent, but there was a more recent change to our controversial issues policy that did allow for an opt-out. The technically with Ed Code and law, the only opt-out where they need to be provided alternative options is with the comprehensive sexual education and HIV and other STD prevention. In our case, the board had taken action to allow for an opt-out when it pertained to something that could be perceived by some as controversial, and allow for an alternative. We also, through our complaints regarding instructional materials, there is an opt-out option in that case, that if there is a formal complaint, while we take our steps to address the complaints, that students are allowed to have an alternative assignment while the materials in question continue to operate as planned.
In the packet you have, on page 51 is a copy of the Controversial Issues Board Policy, and what Carrie's referring to is the last 3 paragraphs of that. And it says, just for the benefit of the audience, that parents and guardians shall be given ample notification prior to instruction of controversial issues, which we do through our syllabus in the fall. Second, that in addition to being notified in advance for comprehensive sexual health and HIV or prevention is required by law, parents and guardians shall be notified that they may request in writing that their child be excused from instruction, and if they decline such instruction, may be offered an alternative activity. Speaks specifically to sexual health education. The third sentence speaks to a student or parent or guardian with concerns regarding instruction about controversial issues may communicate directly with the teacher or principal and or use the appropriate district complaint procedure. And that complaint procedure is also in your packet as well on page 41.
Maybe this is a good time to talk about that particular procedure, right? So, as I understand it, that procedure typically starts with an informal complaint, usually to a teacher, and then perhaps the principal.
Correct.
Right,
That's what we prefer, and when parents come to us directly with a complaint about another human on our campus or about materials, we defer them to the teacher first before we speak to them as an administrator.
And then after that, a formal complaint would be generated, right?
Correct.
And that's a formal process, and data process.
Correct.
After that, I believe you would then probably work with the superintendent to try and resolve that complaint by way of, working through the issues, and then,
Right.
And then at that point, I believe that the board would receive some sort of a summary. Do I have that right so far?
I would assume so, particularly if there was a trend that we were seeing where we were finding that we were getting similar complaints coming up regularly, then that would certainly be a call for us to make some have evaluative conversations in our curriculum or in our teams or at our school sites or with the school board. I wouldn't say that, if I called you every time I got a complaint.
Please don't.
Yeah. But I would say that when we see trends and themes that are occurring, that we would definitely be in touch with Carrie, and probably Heather and I wouldn't come to you in public comment and be like, hey, there's a theme, but Carrie would bring that to your attention through the processes that you all have internally, so that you're aware and can decide what to do about that.
So the other piece that I understand is that at the end of your process, in which you have tried to work through these issues with the complainant, if there is no resolution reached, then that's when the issue would be brought to the board as sort of an appellate process, right?
I would assume so. The one time that I've actually dealt with a uniform complaint process, it was brought to the staff member, and this was not an instructional thing, it was a personnel thing. It was brought to the teacher, the instructor. It was brought to me. I did an investigation. They appealed that process to the school district through the policy, and the school district initiated an investigation and reported back to all the interested parties, and then we moved forward from there.
And I just want to, have we received a formal complaint? No. Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I like that you took a page from Cal with your humor.
Oh, George, did you have questions?
Yes. You mentioned that one school has 8 books to choose from, the other has 4. Where do these selections come from? Is this from the state? Who makes the overall book selection?
I actually, if it's okay, I'm going to defer to Kelly Ward, who's our the Lincoln High School English Department Chair, and he can perhaps speak a bit to him and his team. Are you comfortable with that, Kelly? Speak to that. Oh, and Jennifer Clemens, or Jen, do you want to do it? We'll have Jennifer Clemens come up. She's one of our educational service specialists who works specifically on English language arts, and has been guiding the 5-year plan, so she's best suited.
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay. One school has 8 books to choose from, the other has 4. Where do these selections, who assigns the 8 books or determines the 8 books that you have to choose from?
Thank you, yes. So, in spring of 2021, we came together as a team knowing that the 2 high schools were that there was going to be an additional high school. And we came together to develop our unit maps and our unit plans, and one of those units, particularly in 9th grade, was a choice unit, and the teachers developed a list of novels and a list of books that addressed a variety of topics that addressed the theme that they came up with. And these books were created in a list, and they were vetted over the summer, and one high school decided to use the full list, and the other high school decided to select half the books on the list.
So our teachers selected these books?
Our teachers selected these books from a variety of resources.
Decided on those books?
Correct.
It wasn't from the state or anybody else?
No.
Okay.
That was internally. Okay. Did you have anything? Okay. No. Clara? Okay.
I just have a private question on that part.
It's on.
Really close. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, great. Coolsies. So I wanted to ask you, previously you said talking about maybe having one book not taught at one school because it didn't correlate with the demographics of the school. What did you mean by that?
I would like to, I speak without like going into full context. It gets me into trouble sometimes.
So, we had a vast majority of parents in favor of this book from Lincoln High School, and I've had and quite a few more opposing the book from 12 Bridges High School. I'm not asking to remove the book at all. That's one thing tonight I'd like to clarify. Never did I ask for a book ban. My option was if it not be, what is the correct word, required curriculum that be put on the choice reading list on the quarter where they get to pick a book for kids that want to read it and parents that want their kids to read it. No desire to pull the book out of the school district. And I was wondering if that was a viable option for like the parents at the 12 Bridges High School. If that was something, if both the schools had to teach the same book for the same units, or the books could be played in rotation in different ways where it can be used differently. Instead of it being a required read at 12 Bridges, it could be part of the choice read segment.
Well, it wouldn't be part of the choice read segment because that addresses a different set of standards and learning outcomes and objectives. So the Hate U Give is in this particular unit because it addresses the standards that we need to teach in quarter 4. So if you pulled the book out of, if you made it part of the choice unit, it would be taught in the fall and not in the time when we're talking about.
Okay, so is there a different book that could be taught in place of that for that unit and still have the Hate U Give in the choice reading in the fall?
There could be.
Specific to 12 Bridges?
There could be, and I would
That's what I'm asking.
I would suggest that it would be one of the 3 other books that is on the Study Sync approved novel list, which was Odyssey in 1984 and Bless Me Ultima.
Is there any other books on
Those are the
the
4.
sync? That's it?
Sure, I mean, there's tons of other books, but those are the 4 that are part of the district adopted curriculum that was adopted in 2017.
Okay, yeah, and so, but there are other books if we wanted to add to the curriculum for more interesting reads that, that could be more, you know, age, that kids would find engaging. This book is very engaging for children. I understand why they like the book. I've read the book twice. I mean, it's entertaining, you know, it gets them and gets their minds going. These other books, boring, sorry, for the teenagers.
Yeah, please go ahead.
No offense.
No,
Just
offense.
a little.
I mean,
Entire English department.
The Odyssey is one of the hardest books to read. I mean, you know, it's.
So I think I'm hearing your question, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is you're looking for choice for the Hate U Give at 12 Bridges High School if it's not a choice at Lincoln High School. Is that,
no,
if
no,
it's
no,
required at Lincoln and a choice at 12 Bridges, is that what you're
Could
asking?
it be that way that that could be allowed to be a choice at 12 Bridges if that is what the majority of parents would like to have, and then we have a different required reading? You're saying we have a quarter where we have choice reading. Students get to pick a choice book, right?
Based on a theme, based on a
Yeah,
unit.
so let me try to see you and make sure, and I could be wrong, so sorry, I'm trying my best up here too. The first unit was choice unit,
Okay.
and so the books surrounded by that were specifically chosen because they fell within that theme. I would be not,
What's the theme?
I could not speak to that, I'm really sorry. The second, third, and fourth units, right? Those were not choice. And those were required. Once again, one of the types that our school district has had with our English teams is that 75% be the same and one full novel be in every unit. So that didn't work out that way. The first, it looks like Jen got some information for me. The very first unit was empathy. The second was dreams and aspirations. The third was love, and the fourth was leadership.
So you don't think the Hate U Give could fall under empathy?
I don't think it's that we don't think that. I think it's that the board adopted curriculum indicates that this is what we're supposed to do. And so if there's going to be a change, then that should go through the board adopted processes.
Yes, no, and that's a consideration, but I want to make sure that, you know, we keep this book for the students and the families that want the book. I don't want to go through this rigorous process of changing a curriculum when it's not going to meet this alignment of how things have to be taught to.
I appreciate that, but my understanding from the board policies and regulations is that what's supposed to happen, is that you have to go through a rigorous process to adopt curriculum.
I'm trying to see a way that we keep this book for the students that want it at the 12 Bridges High School and the parents, and also be compromising to not.
And that's why we provided the opt-out. So because some families that expressed that they didn't want to, they have the ability to do it opt-out.
I'm trying to keep all of our kids in a classroom next year together. This year we had a, you know, because of the opt-out, they're not being taught in the same room. I'm trying to look for a viable way for all of our students to stay in class together for their English class, yet be able to read this book at some point in a unit if they choose to, and it not be required for the students who don't want to be removed from a classroom. Do you see what I'm trying to get to here? I'm trying to keep our kids together and still have this book as anybody who wants to read it can, but in a different unit, so that way nobody is separated in the classroom.
Ms. Pierce, were students, was the requirement if they opt out that they had to leave the classroom? Okay.
The parent communication I received, some parents said my student must be removed. Some parents said you must be on the book. Some parents said I hope my student isn't removed, in order to help respect parents who put in an opt-out. We did move to have students go into another classroom. Should any family express to me, hey, I know I opted out, but my kid would like to be in the same classroom, we will make it happen with the understanding that in that classroom there will be discussions about the book, the portions of the book, the F word, the sexual portions, anything of that nature is not something that the team is going to be discussing aloud, because the theme is leadership. If the parent felt comfortable opting out of the book, but having the students stay in the room, knowing that we have 38 high schoolers in a room and we can't control all of them every second, but if they felt that, then our teachers have asked me several times if they can do it, we would be happy to extend that.
Last year when we had one student asked to opt out of the book, the Hey You Give, one out of, I don't know, 300 or whatever it was, freshmen we had, that student picked a different book from the optional list from Study Sync. They ended up going to read the book in the library. That was the decision that they made with the teacher. As best I understand, the parents were never involved. It was just something that the student worked out with the teacher directly. And so the way that we handled it last year for that single student was they went to the library and did readings based on how they worked it out, and then the teacher would check in with them in the class time when other students were engaged in more independent work, where he didn't have to actively be engaging there and could engage with that one single student. So that's how we handled our opt-out last year. I can't speak to what we would necessarily do at Lincoln this year if there was a request for opt-outs, because we're just not there yet. Like, we're not teaching this unit for another 3 weeks. We haven't sent out any reminders to families that this is coming. I mean, I think everybody knows now, but it's not something that, like, we're not as far along because they're probably over a month ahead of us in terms of their curriculum and pacing.
I just want to make sure, because we have, and I talked to the principals about this before, is we want to make sure Lincoln High and 12 Bridges High do the things the same, and because we are trying to build that sister school. So I don't want one book taught at the other and another one taught at another, or not allowed to be taught. That's not okay. Our kids need to learn the same thing and have empathy for the same, out of the same book, out of the same curriculum. I just don't think it's right teaching one school differently than the other. There's already, I don't want to say animosity, but there's, we're getting better, but I think we need to make sure that we teach the kids the same.
I just have like a clarifying question about the opt-out. If a student were to opt out of reading the required book, you're saying that the student and or their parent would have a choice in whether or not they are removed from the room or they can stay in the room?
A parent could ask to be in the room and may remain in the room. We'd be happy to allow that. That is not a problem at all. The problem is that the opt-out and the opt-out reasons for parents were that they were exposed to what was in the book. And therefore, the things that were in the book are going to be discussed in the room. So we had to respect that space of, you said you wanted out, I've got to give you a space in which you won't be talking. Should any parent reach out to me and say, look, I trust that leadership will be the only discussion, they just won't read that book, I am happy to have the kids in the same classroom.
I think that what's important to note is that the curriculum complaint procedure asks for the student or the family to speak to the teacher and then to work with the administration to find a solution that is effective for them. And I think that what I'm hearing from Heather's experience is that, that there have been lots of different experiences. And so there's not one answer. There's not one, like, this is what we would do, because that's just not it, because everybody's got different reasons and thought processes and backgrounds that are influencing their thinking.
Any more questions? Okay, I have a few. First question, how do we justify to the students, let me get the wording right because I didn't write it down. How do we justify to the students us assigning a book with language that we have said is not appropriate to use in school?
One of the things that we value about this book is that the book speaks in a way that is relevant to the student experience. And so although I don't like to walk around and hear the F word, in fact, my first week at Lincoln High School, I had no idea that there were so many parts of speech you could use the F word in. I was frankly quite stunned. Yeah, it's pretty stunning. And so we don't value that, and we don't want to hear that in the hallways. But at the end of the day, this is a book that's representing an experience, and that language is a part of that experience. So we're not addressing and teaching about the use of the F word or any other language. That's not true. We do teach about the use of words in literature, but the F word's not one of them. That's not on the part of the list. No, not on the part of the list. And so we're I wouldn't say glossing over, but we're just not addressing it every time it pops up. There is conversation happening as they're preparing to read the book about some of the themes they're going to hear and the ways that they're going to handle that in the classroom. So it's not being read out loud. It's not being celebrated as a word that we want to use, but it is a piece of representation in that book that is of value.
I would also respond that it creates the environment, the use of that word in the book creates the environment that is relevant to that character in that environment, that time, and makes it real. If we were to look back at books that were written before abolition of slavery, they would use the N-word regularly. They wouldn't call someone Black or African American. Does it make it okay? No. But when we read books in that time period that uses that word, that is something we use because it creates that environment. We don't celebrate it, just as Jennifer said. We don't encourage it. We recognize that it creates the environment that makes the book come to life.
Yeah, that's a very good example, Heather. So, like in Huck Finn, when they use the N-word, do you address that in class? Then why don't we address the F word in class? And
What do you mean by address?
address, like, if we address that using the N-word is not appropriate, and we tell the kids that, it's the same thing as the inappropriate language in this book, how come we're not addressing that also if we would have addressed the other?
Well, I think in part, I think there's a couple answers. One is that we do. So at the beginning of the reading of the book, there's discussion about the things that they're going to hear in the book and about how that speaks to the character of the book, like Heather was just saying. But also creates a line in the sand, that's not language we're going to use in the classroom, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't hear that before, so thank you for clarifying.
Well, I think that was going to be my question is, are we reading other texts that have words that are not appropriate to be used on campus? How long have those books been in use?
My first year being the principal at Lincoln High School, I did an observation in third quarter of a freshman English teacher reading To Kill a Mockingbird. And in that particular book, there's quite a bit of profane language, as well as I heard students talk about other books they've read, Mice and Men and things like that, where there's a lot of really challenging language and imagery that's included.
So then under that logic, you would also then have to stop reading all of those books because they contain words that are not appropriate to repeat in general public.
That's not where I was going at all. I was honestly asking how we address. I honestly wanted to know how we are addressing it. I was not leading anywhere else.
I think it's important to note, and we talked about this, but I know I gave you a lot of information, that we really do work on creating safe spaces in classrooms, and part of every time we launch a new unit is to talk about the historical context or the community context or the the modern context of those texts and create some relevance for it before we launch into the book. We don't just open it up
That's
and
what
say,
I was
hey,
looking
let's
for.
read this book and let's look at all the F words. Right?
And that's not just done in English classrooms, it's done in every classroom in all the Western Placer Unified School District schools. I say that with full confidence. That is happening in band class, that happens in history. I was a history teacher, that happens everywhere. We create those norms with students' voice in that process so that we all care about one another, respect one another, and then have difficult conversations when about like, hey, this is what's being represented, but we've chosen this group of expectations together that we don't use that language in here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, can I just offer one other thing? So before I became the principal at Lincoln, long before I was a science teacher at Trowbridge's Middle School. I taught 7th grade science. This is back before NGSS. And so as a life science teacher, I had the responsibility to teach evolution, which is another very controversial topic. And so in those situations, you're not talking about topics like evolution or anything for that matter, without making sure you know exactly what the standards are you're trying to teach, and your focus is on the standards and the framework that the state provides, and the novel is just or the lesson is just a mechanism to help you teach those standards.
No, I appreciate that, and the reason I say that is because as these kids move on to the professional level out of high school, use of this type of language will get them fired, will get them filed upon, will get them sued. So that's where I'm very concerned about this type of language in books that we offer. I'm not saying to ban, but that's where my question is coming from.
I think that's a great point.
I think you can tell how educated and professional a person is by the low level of profanity they use.
I agree with you, and I think your point is really valid. I think your point's really valid, and I think a really great thing for us to consider as a team about how are we addressing that in particular, right? Like how are we introducing the leadership standards that show up in our CTE standards and other places to be sure that we're emphasizing that kind of language would not be deemed as professional. And we do have state standards that speak to that. So I think that's a great point.
Thank you. The next question I have is seeing the prompts, which I really liked because actually Carrie and I had a question about these types of prompts earlier. Would it be doable for a teacher to administer these type of prompts if there are 3 or 4 books being read in a class? And would that be really difficult? Would it make sense? And having those global discussions where nobody, let's say you had 3 or 4 books to be selected on leadership, and then you gave those prompts, would that be possible for the teacher to read or to teach the value in each of those books? I know they'd have to read the books, right? That'd be a lot. But the value in each of those books on leadership based on those prompts, would it be too much? Do you think it's doable?
Do you want to? Yeah, I think that I'd love to see if Mr. Ward or any of our other English teachers would like to come up and speak to the challenges, pros, cons of doing choice units and how that looks in the classroom. Are y'all prepared for that? Well,
Hi, my name is Kelly Ward. I teach English 9 at Lincoln High. Yeah, as far as challenges of choice units, reading 8 books over the summer, the year before reading the choice unit was really hard. But yes, if you go to page 14 of your guide, you can see that we created a prompt that kind of, you can just replace the book name and the author's name in there. So yes, it is definitely doable. It's doable, yeah.
Not too much for a class, like would the students get it if they were sitting in class and saying, okay, student number 1, you read this book, 2, 3, 4, we'd be like, you guys read books, can you share what your ideas were on leadership in the book? Would it lose students?
I think like some people have said that choice units can be a little bit less engaging because we're not all sharing the same like context, the same idea. We don't all know the same plot, and so if students miss a good chunk of the plot, they may miss a good chunk of the information. But the idea is that the student's still reading a book that demonstrates a theme, and they're still talking about that theme and how that's represented in that book. And from our prompt, it's how does the author represent those qualities and they get an analysis of the author and of the book.
Great, appreciate that. Yeah, I just wanted that insight. And next question is, do you think if the full disclosure of the content of this particular book was given to the parents and requesting to get their approval prior to the reading of this book, I guess this is for you, Heather, maybe also, do you think more people would have opted out?
When we inform families, we include a link to Common Sense Media that speaks, obviously, I'm guessing many of you have been on Common Sense Media, and it speaks to all the kinds of things we've heard about today. And we had one student opt out last year.
Okay.
And I can't speculate if more people would opt out or less. This is our first time doing it. I do fully recognize and carry on my shoulders that we didn't put that paper first. It had worked well. We learned from our colleagues at Lincoln High School. It included in the syllabus, and a student just felt the need and talked to a teacher, and it all worked out. In the future, 12 Bridges High School will put the opt-out in the future should we continue this route.
Will we put what type of content is the book, like kind of like a movie, like you see PG-13, profanity, death, whatever, whatever PG-13 is, or R, would there be some full disclosure about profanity, sexual content, that type of stuff?
Yeah, there's never an intent to hide anything. There's never intent to be not transparent, so we would put it out there and we would do it beforehand.
Yeah.
I've learned that lesson, and
does that make sense though? Doing a full disclosure, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Last question, no, not last question. Do you think sophomore and or junior would be a more appropriate age for this book?
So the book is adopted in Study Sync for grade 9.
Right.
And so for me to make that assumption, I am not quite sure. I would really like to talk to the English team, respecting that I have been out of the classroom for 5 years, and while I spend a lot of time in classrooms watching great teaching, we have seen a difference in students, and so I can't accurately answer that.
Okay, fair enough.
So when I was speaking with Mr. Ward about our opt-out, and it did not specifically say foul language, sexual, it didn't say that, but it did say that there have been expressed concerns, and so it referred families to Common Sense Media in order to do that investigation for themselves. And if you're comfortable, I'd like to invite one of our teachers from 12 Bridges, Ms. Lady Lenz, who's going to speak a little bit about the choice unit question you asked earlier, if you're okay with that.
Which one? Which question?
You were asking about the impact and the challenges of teaching a choice unit with multiple texts.
Yes.
Good evening. Just wanted to provide a little bit of a perspective on the choice unit. I think what we found is that it's really valuable for allowing students to make those choices, but it requires a great deal of self-management and students to kind of direct their own learning. And what happens is it takes away from an educator's ability to really lead and facilitate that instruction that we know our teachers are doing and we want to incorporate into our learning. So I think that's why offering choice in too many units, we worry about the ability for teachers to have those conversations and be doing the close reading and really building the vocabulary and emphasizing the comprehension, all those pieces that really require a teacher. And so I think that's why the opt-out is an option, but the choice unit doesn't allow for those opportunities in the same way that all students reading the same text creates.
Thank you.
Part of the reason why the parameters were set at the district level as well is to make sure that we were in compliance with all the aspects of the board policy as well as what the California framework requires for the standards. And an aspect of that that is reflected in the policy that's also an expectation at the state level is that students are exposed to a variety of materials that provide diverse perspectives. And so if every unit was a choice unit and students were ultimately choosing the same book from the same perspective or viewpoint, then we've essentially not complied with the expectations from the state as well as our policies as they exist now. So that's a concern as well, because when they have the choice, they may choose not to pick different perspectives in those units.
And one other thing that Anna mentioned that I think is important is that while we're teaching the theme leadership, right, we're also teaching text structure, we're teaching vocabulary. There's a lot of other English standards that are not necessarily in the book, but might be represented in the book or in excerpts or supplemental materials that we look at alongside the book. And so the theme of leadership is a huge part of the learning, but there's lots of other English learning that's happening. So her point about like teaching vocabulary is a really good one, not the F word, but other vocabulary that might show up in the book.
I think everyone knows what that word means. Okay, so this is my final question, and this is the prude in me. Okay, because I did read the book, I just, like the language just gets me. That's me, and my family makes fun of me, and they say you're no fun to watch movies with, but that's me. So, this question is from Mom, okay. Is there a redacted version of this book?
I don't know if there's a redacted version, but I think that something that Heather mentioned before that I would just reiterate is that part of the use of the language, and I understand that it's proved.
Yeah,
I understand that, and I felt that way too when I read it, April. Like I was like, what? There's so much language. But I think that the language is there because it helps to illustrate an experience of a.
I get that.
Yeah.
I was just, no.
I don't
have
know.
to explain that to me. I
don't know if there's a redacted version.
I was not raised in a bubble. I had a very hard life growing up. I get that. I was just asking if there was a redacted version.
I don't know if there's a redacted version.
Okay.
It doesn't. Do you all know if there's a redacted version? Say again.
To our knowledge, from what we've been able to find, there is not an abridged version yet.
Okay.
It's still a fairly new novel.
So just restate, so it's based on our knowledge and research, there's not an abridged version available or redacted version available of this text.
Oh, Clara, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay, cool. I would like to expand upon a previous statement made by April. You mentioned that people who use more vulgar language are less likely to get hired for a job, and
No, I said more likely to get fired from their
That's
job.
what I meant.
I'm talking about in a professional, when you're at work.
Okay, well, in the book, Star, before the main character, before she goes on the news and before she talks to the lawyers or any important adult in her life, she is conscious of the fact that if she uses that kind of language, she's less likely to be heard. She constantly has to shelter herself and like kind of pick and choose what words she uses because she doesn't want to appear, like to put like the angry black ghetto girl. And she's like, that's a part of what she has to do. And if you're, that's like, I had a point and then I lost the point.
No, I heard you. Your point was excellent. Thank you. No, thank you for that, because obviously Star and I think alike.
And if it's fair for me to say, to Clara's point, that one of the themes in this book that comes out that I think is very relevant is the idea of code switching, and the idea that people have to present themselves differently in different environments, and that's a real and shared experience of people that live in this community that is really challenging. And I think I heard from several of your earlier speakers about how they saw themselves represented for the first time ever because they live in a space where they're code switching between their communities, whether they're at school or
I don't know if this would be for you guys or Cliff and Carrie and everybody. How do I get another book put on that unit for leadership for parents who choose to opt out? How would we get a book adopted onto that would be more engaging than the ones that are on there now? I sent a couple to Carrie as options that I had found, like The Boys of Dunbar. It's a true story. Anybody who knows basketball knows about Boys of Dunbar. I thought it would be a great alternative for students who don't want to read or parents don't want them to read this. Something as close as I could find without the language that was leadership, coming from a rough neighborhood, making something of their lives. I would like to be able to place a more engaging book for the students who opt out on the reading list.
Carrie can probably speak more to the specific board policy and how that works, but what I will say is that the way that adopted curriculum is selected is that it starts with the state, it goes to the curriculum developers, and then the teachers are the ones that are leading the process with guidance from board policy. So Carrie can speak to the board policy piece of it, but I would like to think that our teachers would be a part of that process as well.
Yeah, of course.
And there isn't a lot of, ultimately, because Ed Code and other doesn't require for opt-outs other than in the comprehensive sex education, or if there's the formal complaint. And so it really is a matter of making sure that our teachers have time to establish an alternative assignment for our students. If something's suggested, part of it is in order for our teachers to do it due diligence, they need opportunity to read it, right? And so there was the aspect of having the time to develop and plan for, right, and build out all the lessons that go with it. I know at 12 Bridges High School, my understanding was initially it was going to be the Odyssey. The teachers came together quickly and worked to make the alternative assignment a town named Alice instead, and they took a full work day to put that together to ensure that they could prepare something different, and ultimately it was left up to the teachers to decide that, but that was based off of the Odyssey being kind of expressed by those who were seeking to opt out as not as engaging. And so we are certainly open to ideas for the future as far as what might be a engaging opt-out option for our students. So that's
what I'm looking for here, like,
we can certainly work towards that. The train has left the station, so to speak, so the unit has started, and so to ensure that our students have access to material right now, I'm not sure that it's would be doable in this moment, but I think that.
But is it doable for next school year?
Absolutely.
And for maybe, I don't know, Lincoln High School students as well, if they chose to. I know you only had one last year, but who knows? Now you guys have got a learning lesson from us. You better warn the parents ahead of time so you don't get the backlash. We were like the example of what not to do.
Right. I think our teachers are committed wholeheartedly to ensuring that our students are engaging in relevant, meaningful material. And so if there is a desire based on feedback, like we're absolutely open to, and I don't want to speak for the teachers, but I'm pretty sure that they would be.
Are the teachers willing to? Yeah. That's what I would like to know. Are you willing to look at other alternative books for those family or students who choose to opt out next school year that would be more engaging, more at the same level as this book is, that is intriguing for teenagers to read? Yes,
I've seen those. And then after this, you want just a couple more, well, any questions? Anyways, just a reminder that we're going to have a board discussion after this.
Yes, so we have a process in which we are constantly reviewing and evaluating curriculum, and we have meetings quarterly with the English department where we have cross-site collaboration days where we work on these types of topics, and I assume that at our next one this will be a topic of conversation, and we will continue to have those conversations, but we will follow our procedures and our policies as we do that.
Okay, thank you. Before we can go to discussion, right? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening.
Make you talk. I'm so sorry. Okay, so now we're gonna open it for the board discussion. I would ask, now the audience is just observing us, so if we can keep the reactions either none or really minimum, and no yelling out or raising hands or anything. This is just the board discussion, so you can observe us. Any discussion? Oh, let me remind everybody too that we have already agendized looking at this 9th grade curriculum, right? And the English curriculum and the process by which we opt out on all those. I would offer that we also need to go back and look at our controversial policy, because we do not have a definition of controversial in there. So, any discussion?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank everybody who's stuck around and everybody who came tonight. It's an awful lot to ask, and I appreciate it greatly. I'd also like to say that, and I can't speak for the entire board, but I think I'm accurate in this. I don't think anybody here, and certainly not myself, ever wants to ban books. That's one of the worst things you can do. I don't think we'll ever do that. We have to work around problems that parents have with different books, and I believe that's what we're trying to do here. But I don't want people to leave thinking this board wants to ban books, because that would certainly be inaccurate, so.
If you have something to say. I'm absolutely agree with you for the next board meeting that we review curriculum and how to create a parent advisory, parent involvement with curriculum too.
Yeah, I think that's part of the process.
Yeah.
As outlined earlier, it's as they create their curriculum, the teachers, the administration, parents, and the board. Right? Do I have all this right? Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody, any other discussion? Oh, yes. Shelley.
Hi everyone, I'm from Phoenix High School. My name is Shelby. I am neither for or against this book and don't have much to say about it because this book is not a requirement since my school does not have a 9th grade class and we have a different curriculum because we're a special school. But when I asked fellow classmates of mine what they thought about this book and what their opinions on the situation we are currently in, and I got very mixed opinions about the book, but a lot of students told me they loved the book and called it powerful, eye-opening, beautiful, and inspiring. I have never read the book. I understand both sides of the argument and think that we shouldn't ban the book entirely because if you tell a student that they can't read it at all, they're going to feel wrong for reading it or read it and feel like they're going to get in trouble if they get caught. So we shouldn't ban it because students need to be able to have the chance to read books that will teach them about new situations they might not know about. I get that parents might have concerns, but at the end of the day, we're here for the education of students and not the feelings of parents. I don't like seeing the language in the book and get how it can make people uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, kids hear it way worse, and if you think the cussing and sexual language is the only time they're hearing this and opting them out is protecting them from that language, then you're wrong because they hear and see this type of language left and right just by walking into school or hanging out with their friends.
Thank you, Shelley.
So, because this agenda item has attached to it the option for action, I want to talk a little bit about my concerns around action. But before I do that, I want to say something to the young people in the room. I don't know if you feel this way, but I can see how you might feel a little mislabeled or dismissed. I think what you're doing is brave. I think in doing that you're growing, and I see all of you. And I think the fact that we're sitting here debating on how mature you are, while you stand out there and present well-articulated arguments, really shows the blind spot that might exist on our side of this table. So I just want to thank all of you for doing this and for caring, because at the end of the day, engagement is more important, I think, than anything. I would rather be in an engaging conversation with somebody who's wrong than be talking about the weather with somebody who knows everything. So I appreciate all of you and thank you for doing all that you have done tonight to help us see that. Specifically to action tonight, I'm fearful at the brevity of this meeting. It appears or could appear exclusive, as if we said, quick, let's hurry up, let's get together and make a decision. I do not like in any way the optics of that, and I don't think it fosters trust. So I'm just saying this for the benefit of my board colleagues that to act upon this issue tonight could bear with it that label. Processes, I think, as we've learned, by the way, I had no idea how hard it was to pick books for high school kids, so, I mean, there you go, complicated stuff. Obviously, these are very thoughtful processes, and to supersede something very thoughtful with something very brief, I think it shines a light on how badly that could go. So again, my caution is that as we start to wind down here, I think action on any part, other than to revisit this at the future board meeting we've already established, would be irresponsible. So that was what I wanted to say.
Could I? Yeah, go ahead. So there was just a few things I wanted to talk about.
You claim that we all have one thing in common, that we have the students' best interests at heart. And I'm asking you to prove that to be true. And I said this last meeting, I'll say it again, we're discussing an aspect of curriculum, and the sole group of people affected by curriculum are the students. I surveyed 136 students who said that The Hate You Give was their favorite book they read last year. Brooke Bird collected over 500 signatures in support of keeping this book in one day. Several students came here, and did you hear a single one of them speak out against the book? No, you didn't. And that should tell you something. You would think that you would listen to the one group of people actually affected by whether or not we keep this book. If you choose to remove this book from required curriculum, it says to me that you don't care to listen to student voice. And if you don't care about student voice, I don't know why the three of us are here. I don't understand how our jobs hold any importance if you don't listen to the voices that we represent. So please prove to me that you do have the students' best interests at heart and listen to them.
Okay, I guess. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Got the good mic. So as Ariana said, the students are supporting this, and I'm going to tell you why. So I had prepared an amazing speech explaining why the sex, drugs, and conversations about police brutality are important in this book. But I don't feel I need to repeat what everyone else has said. This book must be included in our district, in every school. It's our stories, and that's why it's so relatable. Because as much as you want to deny it, this book connects to young adults through reading. Do you understand how hard that is to do? When I hear white, ignorant teens in my classes saying racist slurs and throwing gang signs, they need to know what they're saying. They need to know why what they're saying is so damn important. I read this book, and I'm changed. This book could change someone else's life. Someone may be more accepting of someone else, advocate for their own rights, lead others, and change the world because of this book. So yeah, The Hate You Give has many deep, complex topics, and if you're uncomfortable with your child hearing this, then talk to them. Explain your side of the conversation, how your life experiences have shaped your own beliefs, and truly talk to your child. If you believe a topic in this book is misguided, then explain that to your child. But please don't ruin a book for everyone because you disagree with one aspect. I mean, I disagree with Romeo and Juliet. I think they were stupid. Teenagers shouldn't fake their death and run away together, but I don't think we should dismiss their story, because every book is not one-sided. Every topic has multiple perspectives. So please don't generalize an entire one and remove it because you disagree with one point of it. Take a step back and try to understand that, please.
Okay, I just had a couple things to say. I know this book is has a lot of controversial topics, and it teaches our kids critical thinking. And I really do believe that this is something that our town needs, our city of Lincoln. We are not just LHS, and we are not just 12 Bridges High School. We are Lincoln. I don't agree with multiple academics being taught at different schools. They should all be the same. And I know I hear different demographics, you know, that we all can have a better understanding of the people that are in this community every single day with us. And also I just want to note that I have every faith in Carrie and her cabinet and her principals, teachers, to do the right thing for our children.
I guess I'll finish this up. So I'm going to just let the youth know that I'm very proud of you for getting up here. It is not easy. And as a matter of fact, I asked your principal to give you extra credit, but she said she didn't. So we may not all agree on everything, but please don't think you weren't heard tonight, because we've been sitting here for 5.5 hours on a Friday night listening to you. So I hope you know the value that you are, and that we do all value you up here. We also value the parent input, of course, and the teacher and the administrative input. And with that, I would recommend no action tonight on this item. No action.
Yeah, but when would you want to have?
Well, we already have 2 agenda items coming up, then that's when is more appropriate for action on anything that would affect any type of curriculum in this district and would be fair to the administration, to the schools, to the students. So I would recommend no action tonight. George?
Yes, I agree, but I would want people here to know when the action will be taken.
Well, there may not be any action, we will talk.
It is something that if there is action taken, or if there isn't action taken, that it should be done thoughtfully. It should be done with the correct process, because we don't want to get this wrong, because that is more dangerous than just leaving it as it is right now. That's my thought. Any thoughts on my thoughts? Any thoughts from? Okay. Anything else?
It has to be a motion in a second.
No, I second.
No, this was for discussion or
We're not thinking in
Information,
action.
discussion, and action.
possible.
No, the board has ultimately just decided not to act on this, so they've received information, they've discussed, and they're choosing not to act
Right now.
on,
Yeah, so there's nothing to vote on.
Okay. Adjourn.
I know, right? Yep. All right, you got it right. You're good. I'm good. Okay, good. Thank you.